Chapter 4221, Fatty Girl. Lin Moyu had gained complete control over both formations, knowing every detail by heart. With a little consideration, he instantly knew how to further enhance them. One after another, divine runes flew out, quickly forming a brand new array in midair. Now, both the sky and the lake each hosted a formation, and in between, a new array bridged them. The formation in the sky gradually descended, while the one in the lake slowly rose. As one ascended and the other descended, they made contact with the new formation at the midpoint. The three formations linked together, their power increasing dramatically as endless great Tao energy was drawn in. From within the array, a giant made of pure Tao force stepped forth. The battlefield transformed into a clash between two such giants, each letting out guttural roars and delivering heavy blows. Transcendent power beyond eternity shot through the void, space itself warping and quaking as if it might shatter at any moment. The battle was fierce. Lin Moyu manipulated his Tao giant as though he were fighting in person, suppressing his opponent. At the same time, he improved the formation further, making his Tao giant ever stronger. The lake surface sank, cracks appeared on the shore, and under a barrage of blows, the giant formed from the mountain-shaped treasure began to split and fracture. Finally, after endless hammering, its body was smashed to pieces. The mountain-shaped treasure was revealed, and, like a startled bird, tried to flee with a shrill screech. Trying to escape, Lin Moyu snorted, having his Tao giant reach out and firmly seize the treasure. The mountain-shaped treasure struggled madly in the giant's grasp, screeching in panic, but to no avail. With no path left, it tried to burrow into the Tao giant's body, attempting to gain control itself. Wishful thinking, Lin Moyu sneered, unleashing the power of death to envelop the treasure in an instant. The force of death devours all given time. Lin Moyu could corrode even a treasure of this strength. Even if he couldn't destroy it entirely, the artifact spirit inside would be in for a very hard time. The world-burning fire joined the power of death, enveloping the mountain-shaped treasure. World-burning fire is particularly effective against artifact spirits. Lin Moyu was confident it would be afraid. He'd already sensed the artifact spirit within, and dealing with artifact spirits was old hat for him. Now that it was in his hands, no matter how wild it was, he could make it behave. The Tao giant held the treasure tight, death's power wrapped around it, and the world-burning fire seared the inside. Soon, a wailing cry erupted from the artifact spirit. "Stop, stop, you win, let me go." The artifact spirit finally gave in, shouting in surrender. Lin Moyu heard a crisp voice. It sounded female and was sharp and forceful. He coldly ordered, "Absorb my blood essence. Acknowledge your master." A drop of blood essence flew from him, landing on the treasure's core. For artifact spirits, absorbing the master's blood essence was an act of submission. There was no getting around it. Other artifact spirits he could subdue without such measures, but for this one, Lin Moyu could not be sure, so he forced it. No negotiation. The spirit clearly did not want to submit, begging for mercy, but Lin Moyu ignored her. If she didn't comply, he would not cease. After a dozen minutes of relentless flames, the spirit finally caved, conceding within the world-burning fire. She absorbed his blood essence, which then circulated through the treasure, inscribing Lin Moyu's soul imprint on it. A basic level of refinement. Information about the treasure entered Lin Moyu's mind. Its name was Domain Rivers and Mountains Order. Once accepted, he released the treasure and murmured, "Come out." His words were a command the spirit could only obey. A large head poked out of the treasure, followed by the whole body. An artifact spirit resembling a 5- or 6-year-old girl, a bit chubby, with a cute, round face but a fierce look in her eyes. She didn't seem particularly happy about surrendering, but recognized her position and obediently said, "Fatty greets master." Lin Moyu asked, "Who gave you that name?" Fatty shook her head. "I've known that name since I gained consciousness, but who gave it to me, I don't know." "You don't know who made you either?" Lin Moyu pressed. She shook her head again. "Nope. Then do you know what you're supposed to do here?" "I do. I've always known. If someone controls both heaven and earth formations, I come out and kill them." Fatty even balled her fists, trying to look formidable. Lin Moyu, having controlled both arrays, triggered her emergence and she'd failed to kill him, instead being subdued and refined. She looked more resentful than ever, yet couldn't fight her fate. He pondered, surely the one who set up this trial was the master of the Heavenly Void Palace. But what was the point? Was it just to test skill at formations? What benefit was there in that? He asked. "Your body is called Domain Rivers and Mountains Order. What exactly can it do? Fatty replied, I gather the power of all the mountains and rivers in the domain. I can manifest a giant whose strength surpasses eternity. In addition, I can suppress the domain's rivers and mountains, making them more stable and preventing collapse. And I can absorb chaos force, refining it into the power of the domain, so the domain's strength increases. 3 abilities: combat, suppression, reinforcement. Just from her explanation, Lin Moyu understood its worth. The domain rivers and mountains order was immensely strong. If possessed by any Eternal, they'd nearly be invincible among their peers. That said, no Eternal could easily tame it. To merely avoid being suppressed would already be a feat. You've always been asleep beneath the lake? Lin Moyu asked. Pretty much wake up if someone comes, sleep when no one does. Before me, did anyone else ever pass this way? Fatty answered, there's one guy who came by often, always flying over from above. He never triggered the array. Only one person ever triggered it, but he never tried to control it, he just walked through the maze. So, I didn't bother with him. So it really was like that. The one she referred to as always flying over was the steward. The one who activated the array and passed through the maze was the Kunlun Emperor. Lin Moyu hadn't expected he'd choose the same path as Kunlun Emperor. Sometimes, life is just that coincidental. Now that you're mine, come with me. I'll take you out of the heavenly void palace, let you see the wider world. Fatty didn't seem excited by the prospect, but asked, Master, how do you plan to leave the palace? Are there several ways? One is through the side door. Something went wrong there. It was supposed to be closed, but now it's open. The last guy left by that way, with help from a powerful treasure to bypass the mighty guardian. The other way is to the palace's core. If you crack the maze there, you can control the whole palace. 4222, 4222. Chapter 4222, The Fairy of Tribulations appears again. Lin Moyu looked at Fatty. How do you know all this? Fatty shook her head. I don't know. I've just always known it since I became conscious. Despite acknowledging Lin Moyu as master, she kept her assertive, self-assured tone. Lin Moyu didn't mind, as long as she obeyed. He asked, that side gate guardian, can you beat it? Fatty thought for a moment. Shouldn't be a problem. Let's go check the side gate first. Do you know the way? Lin Moyu said. Fatty pointed, that way. Lin Moyu decided to visit the side gate first. According to Fatty, the Kunlun Emperor escaped through it, with the help of some treasure. Although countless years had passed, time seemed to lose meaning inside the heavenly void palace, and all traces and marks remained unchanged. By going there, Lin Moyu could still observe the traces and perhaps deduce what happened in the distant past. He was curious about what treasure the Kunlun Emperor found that allowed him to escape. While there was no danger for Lin Moyu himself inside the palace, it was indeed deadly for other Eternals, even for a half-step chaos cultivator like Kunlun Emperor. This wasn't arrogance, it was fact. As for the butler, who had visited many times, Lin Moyu easily guessed that his real goal was the heart of the heavenly void palace, perhaps to control the palace or use it for some other scheme. Lin Moyu ignored him for now, planning to settle the score after visiting the palace center. The butler, content to hide in the shadows and play tricks, wasn't worth taking too seriously. They crossed the lake and entered a narrow path. Fatty said that at the end of the path was the side gate. She didn't know which treasure Kunlun Emperor got there. Lin Moyu soon reached the path's end. Before him was a small palace, not very large nor particularly ornate, but exquisitely built, constructed entirely from innate primordial treasure materials. While such a structure outside would be a supreme treasure, inside the heavenly void palace, even the paving stones were of the same stuff, so it was unremarkable. Looking at the palace, Lin Moyu felt a sense of copyright yavu. He asked, is this the side gate? More or less. The side gate's behind this palace, and the guardian is behind it too, Fatty replied. What's this palace for? Lin Moyu asked again. Fatty shook her head. I don't know. I've never been inside. Lin Moyu found it strange. You say you were born with all this knowledge, yet you don't know what this building is for. Fatty replied, that's just how it is. I know most paths in the heavenly void palace, but as for every room or building, I really don't know their functions. Lin Moyu thought her memory was clearly artificially implanted, and the only one who could have done so was her creator, the master of the heavenly void palace. But why implant memories like this? She seemed to have an internal map but not knowledge of each room's purpose. Lin Moyu proceeded into the palace, trusting Fatty wouldn't deceive him. The interior wasn't large, just 10 meters deep and wide, with no expansion by space Dao power. Inside was a mess, like it had been through a fight. Items were scattered everywhere: pens, papers, decorations, overturned tables and chairs. That sense of familiarity grew stronger in Lin Moyu's heart. He realized the palace was more like a storeroom, filled with unimportant things. Every scattered piece was a treasure, gleaming with spiritual radiance, but Lin Moyu didn't bother picking them up, as another suspicion was growing inside him. The current situation was matching up with a certain memory, he just needed to confirm it. At the back of the palace, he stopped suddenly. There was a platform, which must have once held something. Now it was gone, leaving just a mark. The mark was long and narrow, letting him guesstimate the shape of the missing item. There was also lingering, familiar, and powerful energy suffusing the area. Lin Moyu's heart surged. He figured out what Kunlun Emperor had acquired here. Exiting the palace, he encountered another short passageway, only 10 meters long, leading to a door. This door had a gap on the left, clearly smashed open by someone. Standing nearby was a puppet radiating dazzling golden light, which slowly turned its head toward Lin Moyu, exuding a terrifying aura. This was no ordinary puppet. Its whole body was forged of innate primordial treasure material, refined to perfect solidity. Lin Moyu knew that even his world-ending palm wouldn't hurt it. It radiated an aura beyond eternity, with both immense defense and attack power. No wonder the Kunlun Emperor hadn't been able to beat it, having to crash through the wall to escape, probably using the treasure obtained inside. Lin Moyu said, "She's yours," to Fatty. Fatty agreed cheerily, shooting from his hand and morphing mid-air into a giant, charging at the puppet guardian. The puppet shot forward like lightning, the two colliding fiercely in a narrow corridor. Multiple tiers of light sprang up around them, absorbing all the shockwaves. The heavenly void palace itself was totally unaffected. The battle was a stalemate, neither side able to secure victory for the moment. With Fatty keeping the guardian busy, Lin Moyu strolled over to the side gate, checking the hole smashed in it. The opening's shape confirmed his guess. The Kunlun Emperor must have used the Ferry of Tribulations he found in the palace to crash through the door and escape. But if that's the case, others shouldn't have known he acquired the ferry, Lin Moyu mused. And the legend places the ferry appearing long before the Kunlun Emperor. How does that make sense? Solving one mystery just brought him a new one. At that moment, Lin Moyu glanced up and, through the gap, spotted a black speck zipping along the Daos, rapidly approaching the 5 generations, heavenly void palace. The Ferry of Tribulations. Lin Moyu cried quietly. The very ferry he had been seeking was now flying straight for the palace, soon coming to hover overhead before slowly descending, right to the center of the palace. Without hesitation, Lin Moyu called to Fatty, "Let's go." 4223. 4223. Chapter 4223. My choice is the right choice. Fatty was very obedient, immediately stopping and following Lin Moyu away. The side gate guardian was only responsible for guarding the side gate. Once inside the palace, it would not act again, instead returning at once to stand straight at the side gate, meticulously fulfilling its duty. Standing inside the palace, Lin Moyu glanced at the side gate guardian. This puppet, surpassing even the eternity level, might well be the peak of puppet crafting arts. If there were more of such puppets, they would constitute a terrifying force. In another sense, if not for his own existence in the 5 regions domain, a single one of these puppets, once unleashed, could sweep through the entire domain. Even the half-step chaos-level Kunlun Emperor, when faced with this guardian, had no choice but to use the Ferry of Tribulations to smash his way out of the Heavenly Void Palace and escape. This shows just how powerful the Heavenly Void Palace is and how strong its master must be. Lin Moyu proceeded with 3 parts caution, telling Fatty to lead the way to the palace's central area. According to Fatty, their current location was only at the edge of the Heavenly Void Palace, the outermost layer. To reach the center, they would have to cross the ancient forest inside the palace, which would not be an easy task. Even Fatty was not certain of making it through. Following corridors and passing through layer upon layer of palace walls, Lin Moyu realized the internal structure was extremely complex, a giant maze in itself. Without Fatty's guidance, one would likely never even leave the periphery, let alone see the ancient forest or reach the core. Moreover, many dangers lurked here. A wrong turn could spell trouble, even an eternal might meet their death. Lin Moyu speculated that the Kunlun Emperor most likely got lost in these outer parts, eventually stumbled into that storeroom palace, and by luck obtained the Ferry of Tribulations, managing to save his own life as a result. The designs within the heavenly void palace were intricately linked. Had Lin Moyu not cracked the two formations of heaven and earth over the lake or tamed Fatty, he too would have struggled to find the right way. The fruit he had planted via causal ritual was already subtly working, pointing him to the correct path, perhaps even the only correct path. After roaming the palace for about half the day, Lin Moyu encountered a most unusual door. This door was far higher than any others, and terrifying power surged from it to the sky, linking straight to the heavenly Tao. This meant that the only way through was straight from the front, neither above nor below offered any path. In front of the door stood two puppet guardians, just like the one at the side gate, each boasting power beyond eternity. Any eternal would be stopped, and even a half-step chaos being couldn't pass. Lin Moyu was not worried, he didn't even need to act personally to get through. Fatty said, I can hold off one. Meaning the other would be up to Lin Moyu alone. Even so, though Fatty had become his artifact, her stubborn personality remained unchanged. Of course, had Lin Moyu insisted she go against both, she would have done so only with some irritation. Lin Moyu shook his head. No need for you to act. I'll handle it. With a thought, an ocean of crystal undead servants surged forth. Against these two puppet guardians, even numbers would not help, the undead simply weren't strong enough. As puppets rooted in the heavenly void palace, with limitless energy supply, they had no fear of attrition. But Lin Moyu never meant to defeat them outright. The role of the undead servants was just to entangle, tying them up so he could move forward and open the door. The undead and the puppets fought it out, swaths of the undead being smashed to bits, but every second they regenerated back to life. The undead adjusted tactics on their own, using relay attacks to keep the two puppets occupied and gradually pulling them aside to open up space in front of the door for Lin Moyu. Leisurely, Lin Moyu strolled to the grand door. At a glance it looked 100 meters tall, but upon close scrutiny one would find it effectively boundless, as if one's eyes could not reach its end. Upon its surface were endless patterns intertwining into a staggeringly complex design. He tried pushing the door. It didn't budge. Fatty, your turn. Fatty answered and transformed into a giant, bracing herself to push open the door. The engravings on the door all lit up, emitting an ear-splitting grinding noise. This door, unopened for countless years, seemed in this moment ready to move. Fatty bore the power of the entire domain's mountains and rivers, her strength unmatched, beyond even the Lord of Force. The door grew brighter and brighter until all the patterns glowed. Then, with a sudden blast of force, Fatty was sent flying, and even Lin Moyu was forced back a dozen steps before finding his footing. A ceaseless downpour of Tao force rained upon the door, making it shine ever brighter, yet it remained unmoved. Fatty flew back and said, I'll try again. She looked deeply unwilling to give up. Lin Moyu let her proceed. Fatty turned into a giant once more and threw all her strength at the door. This time, as soon as she exerted force, the door boomed and lit up, flinging Fatty a kilometer away. She only stopped upon crashing into a tall wall. Lin Moyu chuckled, wanna try again? Flowers, please. Fatty, though unwilling, knew her limits. No, no more. Lin Moyu had already seen that Fatty couldn't open the door. Neither could he. The door was sealed by a formation, a unique one, impossible to push open unless the formation was solved first. The carvings on the door were not ordinary patterns but a weaving of over 1,000 divine runes. Lin Moyu recognized this style. The runes had been broken apart, but not entirely disconnected, forming a state between continuity and division. Then, those scattered runes were blended together to create this unique design. Within the design, a powerful formation was hidden. Fatty's Heaven and Earth Grand Array was a simplified expression of rune manipulation, while this door represented the most complex style. One simple, one complex, it showed two extremes in divine rune use. Since entering the heavenly void palace, formations and divine runes had been everywhere. Clearly, the palace's master was a master of the art. Lin Moyu analyzed the structure of the door's array, reassembling the scattered runes until he understood its core and deduced how it could be unraveled. Soon, he made out the logic, but his expression grew heavy. He discovered there was no way to solve this formation, a dead array. Such arrays are designed to require a specific, key object. If that is lost or destroyed, the formation becomes insolvable, even to its own creator. The keys to the formation before him were the two puppet guardians. Meaning only they could open this door, no one else could. Thus, one would need to control both puppet guardians at least temporarily. To control two half-step chaos puppets harder than killing them, Lin Moyu remarked to himself. This was no easy feat. While Lin Moyu pondered, Fatty timidly tried pushing the door again and again, only to be repeatedly blasted away. Agitated, she stomped her foot, cracking the primordial treasure floor beneath her feet. After a moment, powerful energy surged from Lin Moyu, and he murmured to himself, "I have already planted the fruit, my choice is the right choice, it doesn't have to follow your prescribed path." 4224. 4224. Chapter 4224. The Ancient Forest Within the Palace. Lin Moyu's aura grew ever stronger. Ever since he entered the Heavenly Void Palace, he'd maintained power-gathering mode, holding himself in a half-step Chaos Realm state. Within the Heavenly Void Palace, half-step Chaos Realm was just enough to ensure self-preservation, like an invincible chess piece able to wreak havoc on the board, but still only a piece, not the player. At this moment, Lin Moyu aimed to overturn the board, either become the player himself, or end the game for everyone. Controlling the guardian puppets was nearly an impossible task, subduing them by force would even be easier. Since that was the case, he'd just break down the door directly. Lin Moyu realized one thing: with the fruit planted by the causal ring, every choice he made would be the correct one. Power surged, thunder roared within him, and his aura leapt to the next level. The difference between half-step Chaos Realm and true Chaos Realm was vast, like the gap between eternity and the Great Tao Realm, hundreds or thousands of times over. Fatty was so startled by Lin Moyu's surge in power that she stood to the side with huge, shocked eyes, unable to speak a word. Inside the Heavenly Void Palace, domain rules could not reach, so Lin Moyu had no fear of being expelled by domain rejection. World-annihilating palm of the Great Tao. Lin Moyu, now in Chaos Realm, unleashed a palm strike with his full force. A massive handprint appeared in the void, drawing upon the power of the Tao. All the Tao forces were gathered up, instantly refined into primordial Tao energy. The handprint slammed down on the great door. The door burst with dazzling radiance, resisting the world-annihilating palm. Lin Moyu was smashed to pieces, but immediately revived in a flash of violet light. Watching, he saw his attack was steadily crushing the resistance. Both sides' forces were sources of Tao power, but the world-annihilating palm had a unique trait: it could refine the Tao force it struck, turning it into its own. So, for every bit the imprint pressed forward, the door's power was depleted, but so too did the hand's power decline. Power gather. Lin Moyu's aura surged again. The scene replayed itself. If he couldn't overturn the board in one strike, then he'd do it twice. If twice wasn't enough, he'd do it 3 times. Once more, Lin Moyu broke into Chaos Realm, launching another world-annihilating palm. Without pause, he cycled in and out of Chaos Realm, dying and being reborn with every strike. This was nothing new to him, just routine by now. With 10 consecutive strikes, the door could no longer withstand him. With a thunderous crash, it finally shattered. The door wasn't opened, it was battered to pieces by brute force. Lin Moyu looked at his handiwork with satisfaction, muttering, "Another way to deal with an insolvable array is to simply break it by force." This was a valid alternative. Lin Moyu had also considered, if the world-annihilating palm failed, he'd simply use his catastrophic scepter. He refused to believe this door could block such a divine weapon. Fatty was not only shocked but also a little bewildered. "So you can do it like that?" Lin Moyu grinned. "There's nothing you can't do. Let's go." With that, he strode across the shattered door in 2 or 3 steps, Fatty hurrying to follow. As Lin Moyu passed through, the undead servants instantly vanished as though they'd never been there. The 2 guardian puppets, deprived of opponents, simultaneously returned to their posts at the 2 sides of the heavenly gate. Their job was to guard the door. Whether the door was intact or destroyed was none of their concern. They were only puppets without intelligence, incapable of reflection, acting solely on orders. Beyond the door was a grassy prairie, and ahead, an ancient dense forest. In the depths of the misty woods stood a spurred hall faintly visible. Fatty pointed to the barely discernible hall. "That's the center of the Heavenly Void Palace." Looking at the spurred hall, Lin Moyu felt it looked oddly familiar, and he could also see the Ferry of Tribulations, which had arrived from afar, currently parked atop the spire. Around the tower, great Tao energy billowed, forming drifting clouds. Lin Moyu could also see a certain figure inside, hiding sneakily among the mists. It was the butler, the steward. The butler, though formless, could blend himself with the Tao force, making him difficult to spot. But as long as one had a soul, the undead eye could always find it. The butler never expected that his presence would be so easily detected. "So lively." Lin Moyu laughed. His hunch was correct, the butler's goal was indeed the heart of the Heavenly Void Palace. Fatty was puzzled. What's so lively? Lin Moyu just smiled. Nothing, just that the ancient forest of the palace lies ahead, right? Fatty took the cue. That's right. We're in the heart of the palace now. To reach the center, we have to go through the ancient forest, and the forest is very dangerous. What kind of dangers? Lin Moyu pressed. Fatty shook her head. I only know it's dangerous, but as for what the risks are, I don't really know. Once again, a half solution. Fatty was essentially a guidepost and little more. She wasn't withholding information, she simply wasn't aware of it herself. At the edge of the forest, Lin Moyu saw ancient trees of various heights and girths, rooted in graceful disorder across the ground. These trees had existed since the construction of the Heavenly Void Palace, now countless years old. Thick and towering, they seemed to have grown to their limit. Compared to the tree he'd seen in the small garden, these were even more formidable. Each tree held peak eternal level combat power. Plus, given their nature, every tree had countless branches and roots, capable of forming warriors or transforming into weapons. When all activated, they could lock down the whole ancient forest. At that point, it wouldn't be a matter of numbers. Even if Lin Moyu summoned an army of undead, there would be too few able to truly fight at the front. Just imagining it, Lin Moyu realized that his undead servants would never breach this defense. It was as if his own tactic of surrounding the enemy with undead was now being used against him. No matter how many he deployed, they'd never get through. In addition, the ancient forest offered more than just trees. Through his undead eye, Lin Moyu saw that each tree had a soul, all of about equal strength. But deeper in, closer to the center, there were even more powerful souls. Such souls exceeded even the power of eternity. Lin Moyu judged them to be half-step chaos level. There were roughly 10 of them in the area near the center. Closer still to the very core, there was a soul of even greater power. This, Lin Moyu judged, would be the real challenge. Now, Lin Moyu had two choices. 1. Keep using power gathering, raise himself to Chaos Realm, then open a way with the world-annihilating palm, blasting his way inside. 2. Find a way to break through the situation, because with such a careful arrangement from the palace's master, there had to be a correct method. He just had to figure it out. He pondered over the intentions behind such an elaborate design. Since his arrival in the Heavenly Void Palace, everything related to divine runes and formation arts. Clearly, the palace master sought someone skilled in formations, but after solving a portion, Lin Moyu had rebelled, overturning the plan instead of following the intended route. Since he'd come this far, he might as well keep going on his own path come what may. Lin Moyu resolved to force his way through, but not relying entirely on power gathering and brute strength. 4225. 4225. Chapter 4225, Experiment after Experiment. A massive number of undead servants were summoned, densely occupying both the sky and the ground. Though the ancient forest within the palace was vast, it could not withstand such sheer numbers of undead. Over 100 trillion undead servants surrounded the ancient forest, forming a complete ring of encirclement. In terms of sheer numbers, the undead were not fewer than the ancient trees of the forest, and perhaps even surpassed them. But in terms of individual combat strength, each undead was somewhat inferior. Next, Lin Moyu took out the catastrophic scepter. Such a good opportunity is hard to come by. Not running an experiment would be a real waste. Fatty girl didn't understand what Lin Moyu meant, but when she saw the catastrophic scepter, she immediately felt a bone-chilling fear. With a swoosh, she retreated more than 100 meters, her voice sharper than usual. What is that thing? Lin Moyu chuckled. My artifact. Fatty stared at the catastrophic scepter, an intense feeling arising. If she was struck by that thing a few times, she could actually die. Her own body was incomparably sturdy. She never believed it possible that anything could shatter her. Now, with the catastrophic scepter, she had a whole new understanding. Lin Moyu willed and activated the catastrophic scepter. With his greater strength, controlling the scepter was now much easier. It responded to his every thought. The 4 gemstones on the catastrophic scepter lit up, then the balance gemstone suddenly glowed brilliantly, its light enveloping a vast area. At least a third of the ancient forest was covered by this radiance, and far more undead servants were included in its range. The balance gemstone radiated its unique glory, rewriting the rules within its coverage. The aura of the undead began to rise, while the aura of each ancient tree in the forest began to fall. The ancient trees awakened one by one, as if greatly stimulated, countless branches whipped through the void. Fatty simultaneously cried out, "What's happening? Why is my power weakening? Lin Moyu smiled softly, don't panic. This is a normal change. Fatty knew Lin Moyu was the culprit, or more accurately, it was his artifact. But Lin Moyu was the master and she merely the servant. Whatever he did, she had to obey. She stopped fussing, but continued to watch the catastrophic scepter warily, deeply afraid of it. The ancient trees woke from slumber and immediately locked onto the origin, the source. Countless branches pierced space, lashing toward Lin Moyu. Lin Moyu, as the instigator of everything, naturally became the primary target of their assault. He didn't need to do anything personally, his undead servants were already arrayed in front, blocking all attacks on his behalf. The ancient trees were individually stronger than the undead. Normally, it would take tens or even hundreds of times more undead as meat shields to barely block their attacks. But under the influence of the balance gemstone, the undead's power increased, while the ancient trees' power diminished, bringing both sides to the same level, neither able to overpower the other. The undead blocked the ancient trees' attacks, and the undead affected by the balance gemstone turned to assault the forest. They became vanguard blades, stabbing into the ancient woods as if to rip the forest open. The trees waved their branches, and endless roots burst from the ground to weave into walls in the void, firmly stopping the undead. Everything unfolded just as Lin Moyu had expected, neither side could best the other. Even using the balance gemstone to equalize both sides' strength, the undead serving Lin Moyu still could not break through the forest head-on. There were simply too many formidable trees, with endless branches, and only the foremost ranks of undead could actually fight. The branches formed tree warriors and fought the undead, while the roots turned into massive shields protecting the entire forest. Lin Moyu slowly rose into the air, surveying the forest from above. When the large-scale clash between the undead and the ancient woods erupted, uncountable divine runes lit up within the forest. Each rune developed into a formation, and these in turn wove themselves into a huge network of arrays, linking the whole forest as one. This allowed the power of the trees to intermingle and be shared. Even if Lin Moyu wanted to break a single point, he could not. He realized this was the real solution intended, to crack the Great Formation, and use it to fight back against the forest. This was the arrangement set by the master of the Heavenly Void Palace, the right answer to the game. But Lin Moyu deliberately didn't want to play by those rules, he had his own ideas. Since he was overturning the game board, why walk someone else's route? To Lin Moyu, breaking this formation was only a question of time. After a glance, he already had an idea. The formation's array technique did not surpass his own, nor did it offer anything for him to study, so there was no need to waste time on it. Instead, he decided to use the ancient forest and its endless trees to run 10 experiments of his own. The balance gemstone continued to shine, sending the whole battle into a bizarre state of equilibrium no one could win. Now, faint and unusual auras began to rise from Lin Moyu. A force beyond the Tao itself spontaneously manifested within him, quickly spreading to every undead servant present. Chaos spell. Fortify troops. This was a powerful chaos-level spell on par with power gathering, able to boost all summons by one realm. Even if only a small step, it was enough. With the balance gemstone in play, Lin Moyu's undead had already barely reached the Eternal Realm's higher levels, nearly approaching the Eternal Peak. The ancient trees, originally peak eternal, were pulled down in power by the balance gemstone, leaving them also near but still not quite at eternal peak. Lin Moyu cast the Fortify Troops spell, causing the undead to leap in power, rocketing instantly to the true peak of eternity, barely a thread away from half-step chaos. Surprisingly, the balance gemstone did not suppress this sudden rise in undead power, and the equilibrium remained. In other words, the chaos-level Fortify Troops spell was not restrained by the balance gemstone. Now, the undead's power surpassed that of the trees. The earlier equilibrium was broken, and the undead began to breach the tangled defenses of the trees and pressed inside. This was precisely the experiment Lin Moyu wanted to conduct, and the results were exceedingly gratifying. From then on, he would have a new trump card. With undead servants, supported by both Fortify Troops and the balance gemstone, their combat force could rise dramatically. The tree-formed defenses were totally shattered. Undead surged in from multiple points, breaking through lines, and teams of undead rampaged inward, leaving the forest riddled with devastation. Undead attacks poured down like a rainstorm. Cracks appeared on tree after tree, which then toppled to the ground. Even when their trunks broke, the roots of the trees still put up fierce resistance, fighting on. The undead didn't hold back. Breaking the earth, they plunged below the surface, uprooting ancient trees and hacking them to pieces. The trees' vitality was tremendous even when 70 or 80% of their roots were destroyed, they didn't die, and kept fighting. Still, the undead showed no mercy, killing until there were none left standing. At last, an ancient tree was slaughtered and, in death, released a wail while its soul fire was extinguished. Lin Moyu smiled lightly. The next experiment can begin. Asterisk 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 asterisk. I want to take a moment to address an ongoing issue that's become frustrating. Recently, I ran into problems with the chapter titles because things got mixed up, and I believe it's time to say this again, clearly. Please do not post future chapter names or spoilers in the comments. If you're that eager to share, you're welcome to make your own account and post chapters yourself. But don't ruin the experience for others. I've mentioned this multiple times in the past, yet it keeps happening. I post here because I genuinely enjoy the interface and want to share the story with fellow readers who appreciate it. Spoilers don't just affect others, they affect me too. Let's respect the space and keep it enjoyable for everyone. Asterisk 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 4226 4226 Chapter 4226 Sweeping forward all the way. The ancient tree fell in battle, its corpse rapidly rotting into dust. Yet even as dust there was substance remaining, and to Lin Moyu, that was enough. For his next experiment, corpse explosion. These ancient trees were immensely strong, their base strength having touched upon the half-step chaos realm. Yet their bodies had not truly undergone chaos transformation and still belonged to a category acceptable within the domain. Lin Moyu understood that chaotification and domain level were two completely different concepts. If a body was not chaotified, then even an Eternal's physical body and soul, once inside chaos, would not last long. The power of chaos could inflict immense damage on an Eternal's body and soul, and this damage was irresistible. The most basic requirement for chaotification was to reach the half-step chaos realm, in other words, the final step for an Eternal, at least the need to step out that half-step. In the past, even though the Kunlun Emperor made it to the half-step, he did not enter chaos, his body was not chaotified. He didn't make it through the Soul Devourer test then. It's not clear whether he gave up, or realized that half-step chaos realm was not enough to get through the Soul Devourer ordeal. In the Spirit Demon clan previously, through the Supreme Monument, Lin Moyu learned some information about chaotification. Only when both body and soul had completed chaotification could one truly transcend. At that time, the strength of flesh and soul would increase dramatically by dozens or even hundreds of times. In this ancient forest, there were 10 powerful ancient trees at half-step chaos realm. Closer to the central spire palace, there were another 10 that seemed to have reached true chaos realm. Even if Lin Moyu entered chaos realm, he wasn't sure he could face those. But he didn't want to walk the usual road or follow the chessboard laid out by the Heavenly Void Palace's master, so he had to figure out other methods to take them down. But Chaos Realm was too formidable. Even with spell methods letting him step briefly into Chaos Realm, Lin Moyu felt how terrifying that realm was. If the other party was truly Chaos Realm, it was even unknown whether the Balance Gemstone would have effect or not. For this, Lin Moyu wanted to conduct his second experiment not by using the ancient forest's formations as weapons, but by turning the ancient trees themselves into weapons against each other. He also wanted to see if corpse explosion could injure a Chaos Realm opponent, and just how savage Chaos Realm truly was. His soul wrapped around the corpse of a slain ancient tree, and a puff of dust floated up, emitting an odd aura. Lin Moyu raised his hand and gently pointed, "Corpse explosion." His movement was incredibly gentle, seemingly casual, yet the ancient tree he pointed at suddenly erupted in a blast that shook the heavens. Its body exploded from within. One moment it was fighting, the next it was shattered to pieces, the explosion spreading from its body to its roots. It didn't just die itself, even nearby ancient trees were drawn in. The underground roots of the ancient trees were tangled and interconnected. The explosion's effect spread to at least 5 nearby trees, each damaged to some degree, with countless branches and roots torn apart. But this was just the beginning. As the corpse of the blasted tree hadn't yet fully turned into dust, Lin Moyu locked onto it again. Once again, a gentle point, corpse explosion. Boom! The explosion was earth-shaking, rushing all the way skyward, even the heavenly Tao in the sky was shattered by the shock. 2 explosions, each one more powerful than an Eternal's all-out blow, the force was terrifying. Fatty watched, aghast. Master, what did you just do? Lin Moyu's array of techniques was far too bizarre. Fatty could not discern what method Lin Moyu had used. Just such a casual gesture, and an ancient tree of the eternal level simply blew up. If that finger were pointed at her, would she detonate on the spot? Fatty decided it was best to rein in her temper and be more polite to this master, Lin Moyu. Lin Moyu gave Fatty a calm glance and said indifferently, just an experiment, nothing to dwell on. The calmer Lin Moyu appeared, the more unfathomable he seemed to Fatty. The 2 explosions were just the opening scene, not even worthy of being called the overture. The real show began. Lin Moyu's finger kept pointing, explosions followed one after another, and ancient trees fell continuously. His corpse explosion, coordinated with the crushing advance of the undead servants, caused more and more ancient trees to die. The once densely packed ancient forest was quickly cleared away in huge patches. With more corpses, Lin Moyu's experiments deepened. He started detonating 2 trees at once, then 3, then 4, measuring the effects. After a round of explosions, Lin Moyu determined the most efficient approach, exploding 5 trees at once. Though this couldn't immediately kill all 5, it did severely injure them. One more explosion would finish them off. Thus, 2 tree corpses could kill 5 trees, yielding 5 more corpses. These 5 could explode and kill more than 10 ancient trees. Lin Moyu strolled through the ancient woods as if at leisure, walking upon the dust from ancient corpses and over the bodies of fallen trees. The footprints left in the dust were his last gift to them. Dust to dust, earth to earth. You never truly belonged in this world. Go in peace. Lin Moyu murmured these words, as if giving them their final blessings. Fatty followed speechlessly behind. Earlier she'd called the ancient woods deadly, but before Lin Moyu they were as easy as walking through a garden, even easier than dealing with herself had been. Fatty even felt relieved. If Lin Moyu had used these methods on her, she'd probably have been killed instantly. The balanced gemstone's light swept over more of the area. Lin Moyu's undead crashed forth in a rolling tide, the ancient trees, deaths replenishing his energy with soul force. The slaughter pressed forward ever faster, until at last the 10 powerful ancient trees deep in the forest were awakened. Their soul flames blazed, exuding a terrifying aura. They were far beyond the other trees. They stood outside the coverage of the balanced gemstone, and tens of millions of branches whipped through space. As soon as they appeared, the branches grew to enormous size, over a kilometer thick, crashing down like mountains. Countless undead were smashed to pieces, and the branches seemed immune to the balanced gemstone's effects, sweeping the battlefield and putting the undead to rout. The situation had instantly reversed. Fatty exclaimed, "The Tree Kings are awake. They have half-step Chaos Realm strength, very hard to deal with." Lin Moyu responded, "So they're called Tree Kings. Then there must be a Tree Sovereign as well. How strong is it?" Fatty replied, "Yes, there is a Tree Sovereign. Its true strength is unknown, but it must be incredibly powerful. It's only awakened once in all this time. That one time, someone flew in from outside, apparently headed for the Central Spire Palace, but was blocked by the Tree Sovereign. The Tree Sovereign sent a single branch skyward, then crashed it down, transforming it into the ancient forest and smashing that guy to pieces. But he didn't die, just escaped. This time, Fatty's attitude was much better. Lin Moyu didn't even need to ask much, she volunteered everything. Lin Moyu deduced that the guy she mentioned was probably the butler. It seemed that anyone wanting to reach the Central Palace would have to pass the Tree Sovereign's trial. But for now, Lin Moyu would focus on dealing with the Tree Kings. He willed, but immediately frowned. He couldn't lock onto the Tree Kings at all. 4227, 4227. Chapter 4227, Truly Tough. When Lin Moyu's soul swept over the area where the Tree Kings were located, he found it empty, yet he had a strange, indescribable feeling. The Tree Kings were shrouded by an invisible power. Though they clearly existed in the world, and the undead eye could see the soul flames within them, it was as if they did not truly inhabit this realm. The sensation was bizarre. They obviously were there, yet simultaneously absent. It was like seeing an object that you could look at but could not touch, while the object itself could, nevertheless, attack you at will. With a gentle flick of his finger, Lin Moyu sent forth a cascade of scarlet flames, and the hell of bones descended from the sky to cover the Tree Kings. Countless fearsome ghosts of hell rushed out of the hell of bones, but it was as if they had lost their targets. Countless branches lashed out like a dense net of sharp blades, tearing the hell ghosts to shreds in an instant. The entire hell of bones trembled as though it would shatter at any moment. Black Prison Heiyu, with a roar, charged out, spewing dragon breath to burn the branches while sweeping its tail through the air to scatter them. Its dragon claws seized upon branches, trying to rip them apart. But the branches were far too tough. Black Prison's tearing had almost no effect, and the dragon's breath barely worked. More branches whipped in, overpowering Black Prison. The current hell of bones was extremely powerful. The might of its hell ghosts was in no way inferior to Lin Moyu's undead servants, and Black Prison by now exceeded many Eternals in strength. Even so, they were still not a match for the Tree Kings. Lin Moyu squinted. When the hell of bones was attacked, it should automatically lock onto its attacker. This function had never failed before, yet now it had. Even hell of bones could not lock on to the Tree Kings. Black Prison could only grip a few branches. If the branches were not actively attacking, there likely wouldn't even be an opportunity to touch them. As things stood, he could only passively defend. How was one supposed to fight like this? Multitasking, Lin Moyu continued bombarding other ancient trees, while turning part of his focus to the Tree Kings. He observed, analyzed, and searched for weaknesses. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The space before Lin Moyu shattered as several branches lashed out from the sky. Fatty reacted instantaneously, transforming into a giant, leaping in front of Lin Moyu and smashing the branches away with both fists, only to be driven back nearly a kilometer. Cracks appeared all over Fatty's fists. As the domain rivers and mountains order, her whole body was forged from innate primordial treasure unparalleled in solidity. Yet, she cracked from just one hit, which showed the sheer force behind the blow. Had it struck Lin Moyu, he would surely have died. The branches circled back and struck again. Fatty returned as well, intercepting them once more. In less than half a second, the cracks on her fists vanished, her recovery astonishing. Lin Moyu quietly ordered, "Grab it." Fatty, now exceedingly obedient, instantly changed her attack to a grip and seized one of the branches tightly. The remaining branches struck her again, causing fresh cracks to spread across her body. Lin Moyu produced a rarely used artifact, the icy jade meditation mat. He sat on it directly, letting his soul power pour into it. He had used the icy jade meditation mat many times before. It could freeze even the great Tao in the vacuum of the virtual realm and had once been invaluable when dealing with the young domain king. But those instances were only a fraction of its true abilities. Now, Lin Moyu was pushing the mat to its limits, making it blaze with light. Countless fine white threads shot out, instantly wrapping the branch that Fatty held. Wherever the white threads touched, the void froze and all flows of power ceased. There is nothing in existence that cannot be frozen given low enough temperatures and strong enough power. Even the great Tao can be frozen, even entire domains. The crazily thrashing branch went still in an instant. A layer of white frost appeared on its surface. Inside, it was already occupied by the power of frost. "Let go," Lin Moyu instructed. Fatty obeyed, letting go immediately. The cold force violently erupted, freezing the surrounding void and making Fatty retreat in haste. She could sense the ice's danger, realizing she too might be frozen. In the next moment, the freezing followed the branch through the void, enveloping the Tree King. On one of the Tree Kings, icy frost rose, spreading a layer of cold all over it until it was transformed into an ice sculpture. Within the ice sculpture, a pair of eyes appeared, Lin Moyu's eyes. Through the icy jade meditation mat, he let his soul permeate the frost into the Tree King itself. He had not hoped to kill a Tree King with the mat, he only wanted to know why he could not lock onto it. With his soul contacting the Tree King through the frost, Lin Moyu finally realized the answer. Chaotification. So that's it. He whispered this to himself. The surface of the Tree King's body had undergone strange changes, different from all other creatures of the domain. The Tree King hadn't just reached half-step chaos in combat power, its body's surface was already chaotified. Once the Tree King's skin was chaotified, it no longer belonged to the domain. Chaos is the source of the great Tao, the source of the domain. In terms of hierarchy, it is innately above the domain. Therefore, with a soul that was not chaotified, he naturally could not lock onto such a target. Lin Moyu felt a headache, but not about the Tree King itself. Though its surface was chaotified, it wasn't complete. There were still ways to deal with it. What really worried him was the Tree Sovereign. Judging from the state of the Tree Kings, the Tree Sovereign might already be fully chaotified, a truly formidable entity. For now, since he had no solution to the Tree Sovereign, Lin Moyu decided to handle the Tree Kings first. The Tree King that had been frozen had started to adapt, struggling madly. Its comrades lashed out with branches and roots, smashing the shell of ice, which splintered and threatened to shatter at any moment. Lin Moyu's will surged, sending more power into the frost. Countless icy spikes erupted and pierced the Tree King's outer skin. 012107227 pound A cent 180290170. The Tree King had only chaotified its surface. Inside, its body had not. Lin Moyu's soul followed the ice spikes into the Tree King's body, passing beyond the outer skin and at last managing to lock onto it. With a gentle flick, corpse explosion. A huge number of prepared tree corpses turned to ash, and the Tree King's body exploded from within. One explosion wasn't enough to kill the Tree King, so Lin Moyu repeated the process again and again. He had a massive reserve of corpses. He wanted to see just how much punishment the Tree King could endure. The difference between half-step chaos and eternity really was immense. Even after multiple explosions, the Tree King held in pain and rage, its screams like razors to the soul. So awful. Fatty clasped her ears, not wanting to hear the noise, but it cut straight to the soul. Covering her ears made no difference. Lin Moyu blasted 10 corpse explosions in an instant, yet the Tree King was wounded but not dead. Truly tough. Lin Moyu realized that there really was a formidable gap between himself and the Tree Kings. On the strength side, with power gather he could achieve half-step chaos, but his body and soul, lacking true chaotification, were much weaker in defense. His thoughts whirled, but he kept up the assault. If 10 explosions weren't enough, then 20, 40, or even more. He had more than enough corpses, so there was no risk of running out of. 4228. 4228. Chapter 4228, Drained Dry. The sound of explosions, mingled with the Tree King's shrieks, woke the entire heavenly void palace. The Tree King seemed to sense mortal danger, screaming even more fiercely than before, and the other 9 Tree Kings who hadn't yet been attacked started to scream too. Their attacks grew even wilder and more violent. Countless branches and roots tore through the void, striking at Lin Moyu and his undead servants, killing off huge numbers of undead. But the undead were like immortal cockroaches. They died and immediately revived, and their numbers even increased, simply unable to be eradicated. The icy jade meditation mat steamed with white mist, freezing nearly 100 meters around Lin Moyu in solid ice, forming icy walls that also blocked the Tree King's attacks. Fatty girl guarded outside the shield of ice, doing her utmost to take the brunt of each branch, relieving as much pressure from Lin Moyu as possible. The whole heavenly void palace was shuddering. In the outer areas within that massive maze, streaks of aura soared to the heavens. These auras were similar to those of the ancient trees, making Lin Moyu think of the one tree that had previously escaped. There must have been many similar ancient trees in the outer regions, and hearing the Tree King's cries, they were now awakening. The ground began to quake, cracks appeared far off and ancient trees burst from the earth, joining the battle. These trees could move underground, and Lin Moyu had no idea how many might hide in the palace's outer regions, but now that they returned to support the center, it was good news for him. Under the light of the balanced gemstone, these trees could stir up no great storm. On the contrary, they sent him an abundance of ammunition. Good. The more the merrier. Lin Moyu smiled, growing more entertained by the fight. Corpse explosions followed one after another. No matter what the Tree King tried, it couldn't stop the explosions, which were formless and sourceless, impossible to avoid or block, only to endure. After 30 successive deadly blasts, each one as fierce as an Eternal's last-ditch blow, and each one detonating inside the Tree King, even a Tree King at half-step Chaos Realm couldn't handle it. Its body was left with gaping holes. The corpse explosions damaged not only its flesh but also its soul, and wounds of the body were echoes of wounds to the soul. The Tree King's surface was sparkling. Wisp after wisp of chaos force seeped in from the skin into its innards. Wherever the chaos force touched, the Tree King's wounds rapidly mended, and even its soul was being restored. In the blink of an eye, most of its injuries recovered. Almost everything Lin Moyu had done was erased. So, that's chaotification's power. Lin Moyu was surprised. He hadn't expected this kind of functionality for a chaotified body. But his interest only sharpened. He wanted to see what else chaos force could do. By his reckoning, the Tree King was the toughest foe he'd ever tried to kill with corpse explosion. Half a realm's difference really did make a world of difference. Luckily, the ancient forest was filled with trees. His arsenal was limitless. He continued unleashing corpse explosions. The Tree King fought back desperately, but chaos force seemed finite. After a few healing bursts, it stopped appearing. Lin Moyu kept up his barrage, until the Tree King's chaotified skin finally began to give way, wide cracks appearing, its soul aura dimming. No other tricks. If the only function of the chaos force was to recover from injuries, that was a bit disappointing to Lin Moyu. He'd hoped to see more. But he didn't hold back for that reason. Suffering dozens of corpse explosions, the Tree King's body was covered in wounds, even its chaotified outer layer began to collapse. The screaming intensified, but it was helpless. Death was approaching. The other 9 Tree Kings did everything they could, wrapping their roots around their companion, trying to shield it and send its strength to heal. It was useless. Corpse explosion could not be blocked by space or time, it simply could not be stopped. This Tree King's life was almost at an end. But Lin Moyu didn't relax for a second, staring at the Tree Sovereign in the far distance. That towering, terrifying presence hadn't moved at all. No matter how awful the Tree King's screams, it stayed still. It was certainly not just asleep, it clearly didn't care about the Tree King's life or death. Lin Moyu guessed it had its own mission, or perhaps the Tree Kings were irrelevant to it. Maybe the entire forest simply didn't matter to it at all. Just how powerful was Chaos Realm? Lin Moyu had only scratched the surface. Maybe today he'd learn. After a full 100 corpse explosions, that Tree King was finally reduced to dust. If it was that hard to kill a half-step chaos being, a full Chaos Realm being would be nearly unimaginable. With the Tree King dead, its body turned to ash, ready to be used as material for Lin Moyu's next weapon. He didn't use the Tree King's corpse immediately against the other Tree Kings. He intended to save it. Perhaps it would come in handy against the Tree Sovereign. As for the other Tree Kings, he could handle them as before, using the lesser trees from the forest. There was no shortage of corpses, no shortage of dust. This ancient forest was strewn with remains, more than enough for his needs. To Lin Moyu, the whole battle was nothing but another experiment. Now he knew, corpse explosion could kill a half-step chaos being. That was sufficient knowledge. As one Tree King fell, the remaining 9 only grew more crazed, but for some reason they could not move. Their only option was to stand their ground, using branches and roots to fight. They were passive by nature. Once Lin Moyu had found a means to kill them, their fate was already sealed. The balanced gemstone's light eventually shone on several more Tree Kings. As Lin Moyu expected, its effect was less than ideal. Their chaotified skins blocked most of the gemstone's power. But at least, their attacks were somewhat weakened. With the lesson of the first Tree King, Lin Moyu was bolder this time. He channeled a great surge of power into the icy jade meditation mat, making it shine more brightly and unleashing an aura even greater than before. Suddenly, a message flowed into Lin Moyu's mind. The mat had truly activated now, and he learned one of its abilities. Heaven and Earth Frozen Seal. With a low shout, all the power in Lin Moyu's body, including his soul force, was instantly drawn out, leaving him instantly drained dry. Fortify troops and power gather spells collapsed at once. Luckily, the balanced gemstone still functioned, so even after those spells ended, the undead army remained unshakable. Now Lin Moyu looked like a dried-up corpse. With a bitter smile, he chose to self-destruct, his body exploding into a mist of blood, then regenerating anew in a flash of violet light. He hadn't expected the icy jade meditation mat to need so much energy, enough to drain even someone of his level in an instant. But he barely managed to meet its requirements. The mat released a pure white glow, rising through the air and solidifying into ice, forming a mirror. Within the mirror, much of the ancient forest was reflected and then began to freeze. At the same time, the actual forest began freezing too. With a thought, Lin Moyu instantly recalled all his undead. A moment later, all the trees were frozen, a once vibrant world fell silent and dead. 4229, 4229. Chapter 4229, What Fault Is There? Heaven and earth were frozen not with ordinary ice, but with cold energy. This cold penetrated to the soul, bursting forth from the deepest parts of one's spirit, spreading through the flesh, and then permeating every corner of the world. That's why it is called the Heaven and Earth Cold Seal, not just heaven and earth freezing. Within the area covered by the cold seal, everything was shrouded in cold energy, and all life force was extinguished. The cold turned into wind, swirling everywhere it went, bringing endless death. Only within 100 meters around Lin Moyu was the cold kept at bay, a safe zone. Luckily, there were no more walls of ice by Lin Moyu's side at this time. Fatty girl Pang Niu clung close to him, not daring to stray far. She could sense that this cold wind could kill her outright. Lin Moyu looked around and said, "Not dead yet." Within the range, not a single ancient tree survived, but 3 of the tree kings weren't entirely dead. They'd been sealed in cold, their surfaces glowing faintly as they struggled against it. Even their souls did the same, resisting the cold's invasion. They survived, but for now had no power to attack, not even to move. Lin Moyu muttered, "It's still that my strength is insufficient, unable to bring out the full power." Even with all his might driving the heaven and earth cold seal, he could only use about half its strength. With the full power, he'd be able to kill the tree kings. The icy jade meditation mat Bingyu Fuchuan was more powerful than Lin Moyu expected, but its requirements were too high. Every use cost him a death. With a thought, he saw that all ancient trees frozen to death remained intact and hadn't turned to dust, but that did not stop them from being used as weapons. When he'd unleashed the cold seal, Lin Moyu's soul flowed with the cold energy into the tree kings, locking onto them. Corpse explosion. The trees felled by cold all turned to dust, each erupting in explosions, using their last reserves for one final blast. This time, Lin Moyu didn't detonate them one at a time, but blasted 3 tree kings at once. With a thunderous roar, the tree kings barely holding out against the seal suffered a fatal blow. Trapped in the cold, they couldn't even scream, only meeting death in frustration. Lin Moyu killed them with little effort, much easier than before. He said softly, "A powerful, convenient treasure really does save a lot of effort." Fatty girl's expression was complicated. She now felt her master was a complete monster, and all the treasures he produced were monstrous too. Heaven and earth cold seal would persist for some time, and Lin Moyu, manipulating the balanced gemstone, advanced with balanced light into the remaining areas. Well over half of the ancient trees remained, 6 tree kings left. Lin Moyu had only taken 2 steps when Fatty girl suddenly shouted, "Master, be careful." A massive vine lashed down from above. Lin Moyu's vision went black, as if all of heaven and earth were collapsing on him. Fatty transformed into a giant to block in front of him. With a bang, she was sent flying, screaming in pain. The giant form collapsed, Fatty girl vanished, and the domain rivers and mountains order revealed its true form. A huge crack had appeared on the treasure, almost breaking it to pieces. Lin Moyu immediately appeared beside her artifact body, picking up the domain rivers and mountains order and examining it with relief. It was badly damaged, but the core was intact, and as it had self-repair capability it would recover soon. In the air, sounds of shattering grew more frequent around them. The space sealed by cold broke apart. That single strike not only gravely wounded Fatty girl, it also shattered the heaven and earth cold seal, destroying much of the frozen space. Lin Moyu looked at the perpetrator. Not far from the center stood the tree sovereign. A massive branch slowly withdrew. It was clear the tree sovereign had just acted. It actually woke up. Lin Moyu showed no fear. He understood that the tree sovereign's message was, "Don't touch any more trees, or it would continue to intervene." He drew a deep breath and continued walking toward the tree sovereign, and as expected, the tree sovereign did not attack again. The remaining ancient forest fell into a hush. All trees and the remaining tree kings received the order and went still. As he passed by the tree kings' corpses, Lin Moyu casually swept them up, collecting numerous tree corpses along his way. For him, these were weapons, and it was always wise to gather more. As he neared the center, the closer he drew, the stronger the tree sovereign's power felt. Fatty girl, recovering, finally managed to transform back and appear at Lin Moyu's side, weakly saying, "Master, the tree sovereign is incomparably powerful." Lin Moyu nodded, "Don't worry, I can handle it." Fatty girl, though knowing Lin Moyu had many tricks, was not at all confident in his ability to best the tree sovereign. That previous strike had only been a test, yet already so terrifying. If the tree sovereign had gone all out, she herself could have died instantly. Its strength was unlike anything before. She didn't know the source of Lin Moyu's confidence. His belief rested with the causal ring. When he first entered the Heavenly Void Palace, he'd used the ring to plant a fruit that guaranteed he would safely return. He trusted in the causal ring. He believed he would ultimately make it out unharmed. Thus, Lin Moyu had no fear at all before the tree sovereign. As he got closer to the center, Lin Moyu clearly saw the Fairy of Tribulation, which sat motionless atop the central spire, as if waiting for something. Elsewhere, the butler also hid in the clouds of Tao energy, also biding his time. It seemed the thing they each sought was inside the central spire, but none could enter. To reach the central spire, one had to face the tree sovereign, a daunting task. At about a kilometer from the tree sovereign, the ground shook, roots slid across the soil like dragons, drawing a line before Lin Moyu. Do not cross this line. The tree sovereign's deep, aged voice sounded like an old, ancient being. Lin Moyu stopped, respectfully bowed. Lin Moyu greets Senior Tree Sovereign. The tree sovereign spoke gravely, do you know your fault? Lin Moyu was stunned, then replied without thinking, what fault is there? The tree sovereign's tone darkened, you have slaughtered my descendants. That is your fault. Lin Moyu shook his head. I had to reach the center. They blocked my way, that made them my enemies. I killed my enemies, what fault is there in that? If Senior wishes to stop me too, I will not show mercy. Whether I win or lose, I will fight with everything I have. The tree sovereign did not argue, merely said, you have not solved this challenge in the way my master arranged, that is also your fault. Lin Moyu said, your master is not mine. Why should I follow his designs, whose purpose I do not know? Even if he himself appears and tries to stop me, I will fight him with all I have. With a trace of disdain, the tree sovereign replied, your strength is low, you are no match for my master. Lin Moyu retorted, whether I'm a match or not is another question. If this is all Senior wishes to say, words are pointless. Let's settle this with force. The tree sovereign, however, did not attack. Instead, a thick branch slowly lifted, its light projecting an image. Solve this puzzle, and you may enter the heavenly void tower. In his heart, Lin Moyu whispered, I guessed right. Asterisk 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 asterisk. In case if someone missed it. I want to take a moment to address an ongoing issue that's become frustrating. Recently, I ran into problems with the chapter titles because things got mixed up, and I believe it's time to say this again, clearly. Please do not post future chapter names or spoilers in the comments. If you're that eager to share, you're welcome to make your own account and post chapters yourself. But don't ruin the experience for others. I've mentioned this multiple times in the past, yet it keeps happening. I post here because I genuinely enjoy the interface and want to share the story with fellow readers who appreciate it. Spoilers don't just affect others, they affect me too. Let's respect the space and keep it enjoyable for everyone. Asterisk 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 4230 4230 Chapter 4230 The Intentions of the Heavenly Void Palace Master. The Tree Sovereign is the final guardian of the Heavenly Void Palace, and can also be regarded as the gatekeeper of the central treasure tower within the Heavenly Void. Its existence is bound by many rules. The Master of the Heavenly Void Palace would never allow it to act freely. Just like the Torch Dragon in former times, it could have certain privileges, but still had to act within set boundaries. From the first moment the Tree Sovereign attacked, Lin Moyu had already been pondering the purpose behind the Tree Sovereign's existence. All the ancient trees in the ancient forest, including the Tree Kings, could strictly be seen as the Tree Sovereign's subordinates. Given how fiercely the battle raged just now, it is impossible the Tree Sovereign wasn't aware. The reason it didn't interfere may have been for many reasons, one of which could be that it didn't really care. As long as it remains, such ancient trees can proliferate and grow endlessly, so losing a few is of little consequence. However, when Lin Moyu was about to truly exterminate the ancient trees, the Tree Sovereign then intervened, but only as a warning, acting just once. Lin Moyu understood this. Once he stopped attacking the other trees, the Tree Sovereign stopped targeting him. When he confronted it directly, the Tree Sovereign questioned his actions, but naturally, Lin Moyu refused to acknowledge fault. That's because the purpose of the Heavenly Void Palace Master isn't really here. Since such an elaborate setup exists, it can only be to select someone qualified to enter the Heavenly Void Palace, someone with excellent command over divine rune formations, and possessing strength as well. Both are necessary. To reach this stage, one must pass Fatty Girl's trial. Without her guidance, it would be impossible to even reach the ancient forest. And those who meet these standards are always proud and headstrong, chances are high they will see through any arrangement and are very likely to go against the intended path. Lin Moyu was exactly this sort of person, and the palace master would certainly have predicted that. So, reaching this place purely by force as possible, the Tree Sovereign's accusation is just part of the process. But since the palace master wants to select someone proficient in divine rune formations, he would leave the greatest formation test at the final threshold, placed under the Tree Sovereign's jurisdiction. Only after passing this ultimate trial can one enter the center, the Heavenly Void Tower. Because the Tree Sovereign's power is absolute, no one in the entire domain can surpass it. Those who reach the Chaos Realm will eventually leave the domain and cannot come here, and those not yet in Chaos Realm cannot be a match for the Tree Sovereign. It's clear the Palace Master's arrangement is watertight. Even Lin Moyu himself did not have full confidence he could defeat the Tree Sovereign, not to mention anyone else. To put it bluntly, even the Torch Dragon in his heyday would have to mind its behavior here. Even if the Torch Dragon, after transcending, returned with its Chaos Realm cultivation, it might not outmatch the Tree Sovereign. The Tree Sovereign has lived for countless years, its true strength is incalculable. Lin Moyu stood less than a kilometer from the Tree Sovereign. In his vision, the Tree Sovereign stretched from earth to heaven, and in the sight of the undead eye, its soul flame was equally terrifying. Yet to his soul perception, it was as though the Tree Sovereign did not even exist, a rift that made Lin Moyu's heart tremble. However, he had already planted the fruit in the causal ring. Even if he had to fight, he would not be afraid. But if it could be avoided, there was no need to fight. Hearing the Tree Sovereign's last words, Lin Moyu knew he had guessed right. The Tree Sovereign was bound to act by the rules and would not harm him. The Tree Sovereign's branch projected an image, the distant Heavenly Void Tower, its surroundings veiled by the power of the Tao, misty and unclear. Now, the Tree Sovereign used a projection to display a portion of the tower. The tower in the projection slowly revolved, showing its first floor. The Heavenly Void Tower had 8 great doors, each shimmering with multicolored light, displaying all manner of images, lively, dynamic, always changing. The Tree Sovereign said, "For every door you open, you may ascend a floor. My master once said, if you have broken through the formations to reach here, you need only unlock 2 doors, and I may allow you entry to the tower. If you are not someone who reached here by breaking formations, you must unlock 4 doors before being admitted." Lin Moyu glanced at the projection. The Heavenly Void Tower in the image was exactly as it appeared at that very moment, with not a single detail in error. Breaking through formations here or at the actual tower was no different. The ever-changing patterns on the doors were the real formation, created by divine runes split apart and rewoven, their positions constantly shifting, producing complex patterns that massively raised the challenge. If a true formation master came, a single glance at those images would already be dazzling. Even Lin Moyu felt a headache clearly. The palace master's attainments in divine rune formation surpassed his expectations. He turned his head to glance at the main body of the Heavenly Void Palace, cloaked in the Tao's power, hazy but faintly revealing 9 floors. Lin Moyu said, "It seems there are 9 floors in the Heavenly Void Palace, but only 8 doors here." The Tree Sovereign replied, "My master once said, only by opening all 8 doors can you even have a chance at the 9th floor. As for how to enter the 9th, you must figure that out yourself." Lin Moyu nodded and asked again, "In all these years, besides me, has anyone else ever come here?" He actually knew the answer from Fatty Girl, but wanted to verify it. After all, Fatty sometimes slept and might have missed things. The Tree Sovereign answered, "Those 2 above have both been here before, both managed to open 2 doors." Lin Moyu looked up. "They're both back again this time. What do they want?" The Tree Sovereign said, "If you successfully open the doors, they can follow you inside as well." Lin Moyu was a bit surprised. "You mean, if I open the doors, they can enter with me?" The Tree Sovereign said, "That's what my master said." All right, Lin Moyu roughly understood the palace master's logic. If someone unlocks the door's formations, others can follow through, not just the opener. So if the person unlocking the doors doesn't want others to tag along, it's up to them to prevent it, since the Tree Sovereign will never interfere. If you can't stop them, it just means you lack strength or luck. Accept it as fate. Lin Moyu found this reasonable. To be chosen by the palace master, you must be skilled in divine runes, powerful, and have strong luck as well. Such people are exceedingly rare. No wonder so few have entered successfully over all the ages. Lin Moyu didn't act immediately. He had other questions. This is the 5th generation Heavenly Void Palace. What about the other Heavenly Void Palaces? The tree sovereign said, "The answer to that is inside the heavenly void tower. Whether you can obtain it will depend on your luck and strength. But I sincerely hope you can open all 8 doors. Should you do so, I promise to grant you one request." Lin Moyu's brow rose. For a chaos-level being to say this, opening all 8 doors clearly offers the tree sovereign some truly great benefit. The specific benefit didn't matter. The tree sovereign's promise did, and besides, Lin Moyu also wanted to open all 8 doors and try for the 9th. He guessed that the answer he sought lay on the 9th floor. Lin Moyu whispered, "I will do my best." His eyes fell on the formation patterns in the tree sovereign's projection. He began to delve into the divine rune array. It was extremely challenging, but Lin Moyu was confident he was sure he could do it. 4231, 4231. Chapter 4231, Opening the Door. The divine rune patterns in the projection continuously shifted, displaying all sorts of living beings. Among the creatures woven from these patterns were 3 types, some that Lin Moyu had seen and recognized, some that he had never seen before, and a third kind that he had encountered only in passing but whose names he did not know. The nascent beings in these rune images encompassed all worlds, ranging from the tiny like ants and beetles to enormous beasts, as well as a great variety of cultivators. Within the projection, the heavenly void tower rotated slowly without pause. The 8 doors constantly changed their images. These are all the living beings throughout the entire domain. Lin Moyu suddenly realized that the patterns displayed on the 8 doors of the heavenly void tower were not illusions, but depictions of the myriad living beings nurtured by the many worlds of the domain without a single omission, all manifested through divine runes, vivid and lifelike. To stand for a time before the heavenly void tower would be to witness all the lifeforms that existed in the entire domain. It was simply incomprehensible. What he was seeing now was only a projection. If he truly stood before the doors themselves, the experience might be even more stunning. As he studied the projection and worked to decipher the divine runes, Lin Moyu also reflected. These projections were so realistic, and since they could be used directly to unlock the doors, it was clear they were not ordinary images. It must have been some technique from the master of the heavenly void palace, connecting the projection and the real doors directly. Time passed, second by second. Lin Moyu became absorbed in the process. Never before had he seen such a display and transformation of divine runes. Proficient in divine runes himself, he found them deeply fascinating. Now, he was not just seeking to break open the doors, but to understand the subtle mysteries hidden within these divine runes. He had the feeling that only by thoroughly grasping the many profound principles within the runes and achieving mastery could he discover a way to enter the 9th floor and finally solve all the riddles. The tree sovereign waited patiently. Having existed here for countless years, it no longer remembered what it was to feel anxious. In the sky above, the fairy of tribulation floated, radiating a dim oppressive aura. The butler, on the other end, hid within the power of the Tao. They were both waiting for Lin Moyu to open the door, hoping to follow him in. Both had entered the heavenly void tower before, but each had only reached the 2nd level. They must know something of what was contained within the tower and now wanted to go back in, aiming to get even higher. Fatty Girl had said the butler had come many times, but, as far as she knew, the Kunlun Emperor had not returned. In reality, after escaping the heavenly void palace with the fairy of tribulation, the Kunlun Emperor had used the fairy to return multiple times only. During those times, Fatty Girl had not been aware. Lin Moyu had now sorted out his thinking and had also considered whether or not to let them enter with him. According to the master of the heavenly void palace's intentions, if several people entered at the same time, conflict would be inevitable. No one wants others to accompany them in, especially the one who had opened the way, as no one wants to be taken advantage of. But Lin Moyu intended to do the opposite. He did not want to stop the Kunlun Emperor or the butler. As long as they were willing to pay a price, he would permit them through. As for what price, Lin Moyu already had something in mind. His reason for making this decision was that he refused to act according to the designs of the heavenly void palace master. Time ticked by, and for 10 days Lin Moyu sat completely motionless. Fatty Girl was so bored that she curled up at the side and fell fast asleep, as she couldn't make sense of the runes at all and would rather sleep. After 10 days, Lin Moyu finally acted. He placed his finger on the projection and, passing through it, appeared before the gate of the heavenly void tower. His fingertip glowed slightly. Using his soul force as ink, he drew out one divine rune after another. The runes floated in the air, accompanied by crisp crackling sounds as they split apart on the spot. Though the runes appeared torn, they still remained faintly connected, broken but not severed, and still able to function. More and more runes split, only to rejoin and recombine into what appeared a chaotic yet distinctly organized rune. This rune, dizzyingly complicated and almost like mysterious script, in fact now constituted a formation. The rune shone with light and then flew into one of the tower's doors, fitting precisely into a missing space in the pattern upon the door. Boom! The heavenly void tower burst with radiance that shot straight into the clouds, the ground shaking and rumbling continuously, as if in celebration of Lin Moyu's accomplishment. The tree sovereign murmured, "Not bad, only 10 days to open the first door. You are much faster than those two others." Lin Moyu asked, "How long did it take them?" The tree sovereign replied, "The one inside the Fairy of Tribulation took 99 years, the other took 95. Both took nearly a century, while Lin Moyu had only used a handful of days. The difference was enormous. As the radiance faded, the heavenly void tower returned to calm. One of the 8 doors was now fully open, 7 remained. From the open door, the divine runes flowed like water into the adjacent door. That door shimmered with a faint light, its runes rapidly becoming still more intricate, making the task even harder. Meanwhile, the other 6 doors dimmed, as if falling into slumber. Suddenly, Lin Moyu realized that he would have to open that specific next door in order to continue, and only after that could he try to open the rest. This too was a rule set by the master of the Heavenly Void Palace. The first door could be any, but from the second onward, they must be opened in order, and each door's difficulty would increase beyond the last, not simply by a multiple, but drastically. There was no brute forcing the later doors by sheer time. If you couldn't figure it out, then no matter how long you tried, you wouldn't succeed. No wonder the Kunlun Emperor and the butler had each only opened 2 doors. The first one took them a century or so, the second at least several thousand, perhaps tens of thousands, of years, the third probably exceeded their ability, and even a million years would be futile. Lin Moyu muttered to himself, already clear on the reason for all this. He now focused his attention on the second door, regarding its even more complex divine runes, and began the new round of decoding. The difficulty was indeed much higher, but his interest only burned stronger. He had already realized that the Heavenly Void Palace Master's mastery of runes surpassed his own for now. But this process of cracking open the doors was itself a path of cultivation, through which he could comprehend more of the runes, mysteries and, eventually, perhaps even surpass the Master himself. Silence fell again all around. Fatty Girl slumbered on, and the Tree Sovereign was wordless. At some point, the devastated ancient forest began to recover. Sprouts poked up from the earth, silently growing at a tremendous rate, becoming towering trees in just a few dozen days. Some powerful saplings quietly took the place of the former tree kings, their auras slowly building up to become the new tree kings. At this pace, it would take only a few hundred days for the ancient forest to fully recover. Thus, the tree sovereign paid no heed to casualties. It could restore things fast enough. 100 days later, Lin Moyu acted again. Just like before, his finger passed through the projection and appeared before the second gate of the tower. At his fingertip, a flood of divine runes burst out, then shattered and recombined, finally assembling into a runic formation several-fold more complex than before. The rune formation seemed fractured, yet contained its own internal logic. With a push of his finger, the runes shot into the door. With a low rumble, the second great door slowly opened. 4232. 4232. Chapter 4232, actually not that difficult. Looking at the rainbow light shooting into the sky, Lin Moyu asked, how long did it take them to open the second door? The Tree Sovereign answered slowly, 9,674 years and 7,588 years, respectively. The Tree Sovereign remembered it clearly. If Lin Moyu wanted, it could give the precise time down to the second. The Kunlun Emperor spent 99 years on the first door, the second door took nearly 100 times longer. The butler spent 95 years on the first, and about 80 times that for the second. Their time difference on the first door wasn't too big, but on the second, the gap became very noticeable, which meant there was a real difference in their talent for divine runes. However, both of them stopped there. The third door was already beyond their limits. If your talent isn't enough, no amount of hard work can make up for it. With divine rune arrays, it really isn't just about how much time you spend. If you don't understand, then you simply don't understand. If time alone could solve everything, then all those at the Tao Realm and Tao Lord level in the domain would be experts in divine runes. Clearly, that's not the case. As the second door opened, its runes all flowed into the third door, which became even more complex, the difficulty again increasing by several times. This sharp increase in difficulty meant that the next door might need dozens or even hundreds of times more time, possibly breaking through your limit entirely. A faint smile appeared on Lin Moyu's lips. He was more and more intrigued and immediately threw himself into breaking down the third door. After opening 2 doors in a row, he gained a lot, not the satisfaction of solving the puzzle but a deepening of his understanding of divine runes. He was not just opening doors, he was comprehending the Tao of divine runes left behind by the Heavenly Void Palace Master. Opening the gates was secondary, the most important thing was inheriting the knowledge. If Lin Moyu only wanted to open the door as fast as possible, he could go even faster. The first door, he could have done in, at most, 2 days. There was no need for 10 days at all. The second door would have taken him 5 days. Any extra time was devoted to studying the Heavenly Void Palace Master's formation Tao. But Lin Moyu didn't tell anyone this. The Tree Sovereign was already shocked at Lin Moyu's speed. After all, others measured their time in years, while Lin Moyu moved forward in days. Just 300 days later, Lin Moyu took action again. A flood of runes shot out, split apart and entwined, forming incredibly complex patterns. The Tree Sovereign gave a slight sound of surprise, marveling that Lin Moyu had solved the third door in just 300 days. It had thought Lin Moyu would at least need several decades. He hadn't even taken a full year. It also noticed that Lin Moyu was drawing runes even faster than before, barely pausing. His proficiency had greatly improved. Suddenly the Tree Sovereign realized, Lin Moyu was making astonishing progress. Maybe he really can open all 8 doors. This thought suddenly leapt up in the Tree Sovereign's heart, shaking its soul with excitement. Lin Moyu sensed the Tree Sovereign's agitation and silently thought, it looks like the Tree Sovereign really does hope I can open all 8 doors. Does it also want to enter the Heavenly Void Tower, or is there some other reason? As the rainbow light faded, the runes from the first 3 doors all flowed into the fourth, and the difficulty again rose. Lin Moyu drew his mind in tight and began analyzing the fourth door. His acceleration was a result of digesting a portion of the runic knowledge left behind by the Heavenly Void Palace Master. The runes on the doors looked complicated, but there was a logic to them. Ultimately, it was always those same core runes being split apart, then recombined with others. As long as he could firmly grasp those core fixed runes, solving the puzzle would be straightforward and he'd go faster and faster. For most people, it would get harder and harder the farther they went, but for Lin Moyu, the later gates actually became easier. He was learning, he was inheriting, and gradually making these divine runes his own. With that, he was able to draw analogies between patterns and comprehend everything in a flash. Just 500 days later, Lin Moyu made another move, beginning to break down the fourth door. Such a fast pace once again shocked the Tree Sovereign. It wasn't only the Tree Sovereign, the presence in the Fairy of Tribulation was equally shocked. Even the Fairy of Tribulation itself trembled, and the butler, within the way of the Tao, was shifting shapes in surprise. Both of them had spent nearly 10,000 years on the second door and gave up on the third. Lin Moyu opened the fourth door in only 500 days. The difference in accomplishment was enough to cause despair. Lin Moyu didn't care what others thought. He had already started studying the fifth door. He had now digested most of the Heavenly Void Palace Master's divine rune knowledge, which made his pace only increase. The fifth door gathered together all the runes from the previous 4 doors and looked as complex as could be, but Lin Moyu had already fully grasped its structure, and no matter how complex, he could quickly find the key. Unconsciously, Lin Moyu had already mastered its essence. This time, after just 400 days, Lin Moyu unlocked the fifth door. His decoding speed not only showed no sign of slowing, it kept getting faster completely against reason. But in Lin Moyu's view, this was only natural, because he had truly mastered the mysteries within the divine runes. Another 300 days passed, and the sixth door was opened. After that, only 200 days more, and the seventh door was opened. At last, it was time for the eighth and final door. Its surface was densely covered by runes, without the slightest gap. All the runes from the previous 8 doors had gathered here. For an ordinary person, a single glance would be enough to shatter their soul. Dizziness and confusion were nothing compared to these runes. It was in a completely different league. The images on the door kept changing. All kinds of living beings from the domain appeared before Lin Moyu's eyes. He could vaguely hear the shouts and cries of these beings as the runes became more numerous and the creatures evolved ever more real. Lin Moyu had the strange sense that the Heavenly Void Palace Master seemed to want to use runes to create living beings, but, for now at least, it was just short of success. After watching for a while, Lin Moyu raised his head and said to the Tree Sovereign, "Senior, remember your promise." The Tree Sovereign spoke in a deep voice, "Can you really unlock it?" There was clear, tightly restrained excitement in its tone. It dearly hoped Lin Moyu could break the 8th door, but also knew the 8th was the most difficult. Even for itself, looking at those runes made its own heart uneasy. Lin Moyu said, "I can. The 8th door is actually the easiest one." "Huh, something so complicated, and it was easier than those before. How could that be possible?" The Tree Sovereign didn't think Lin Moyu was spouting nonsense, and chose to believe him. "As long as you can open the 8th door, my promise will absolutely hold." Lin Moyu said, "Good." As he spoke, he pressed his finger into the projection and appeared before the 8th door. With his soul as ink, he formed a single rune, a rune that did not crack, but was complex and complete. Lin Moyu spoke calmly. "Actually, the 8th door is the simplest. Here, all the runes of the previous doors are gathered together. Although they remain balanced, this balance is weak. A single disruption breaks it, and the door will open." The Tree Sovereign faintly understood this, but while it could see the principle, it could never actually do it. Not everyone can break such a balance. If someone can, it means their mastery of runes already exceeds that of the one who set it up. Lin Moyu finished his rune and pressed it in. The rune turned into light and fused into the door. Boom! The Heavenly Void Tower shook violently, an unprecedented radiance soaring into the sky. The 8 gates fully opened. The first floor of the Heavenly Void Tower vanished, and the entire tower now floated in the air. 4233, 4233. Chapter 4233, Let's Negotiate. The entire first floor of the Heavenly Void Tower vanished, leaving the tower itself suspended, crystal clear, in midair. Lin Moyu asked, "Is the Heavenly Void Tower normally like this?" The Tree Sovereign shook its head. "I don't know, I've never seen this before." Well, the Tree Sovereign was just a gatekeeper, having no idea was normal. Suddenly, a beam of iridescent light shot down from the Heavenly Void Tower and landed perfectly on the Tree Sovereign. Thunder rumbled from the Tree Sovereign as if some kind of shackle had just been broken. An enormous surge of soul force erupted from within the Tree Sovereign, sweeping out in a hurricane. Lin Moyu was blown helplessly away. Fatty Girl, who was sleeping soundly, was also sent tumbling through the air. The Fairy of Tribulation and the Butler were both blown far off and found it hard to approach for a while. A hole opened above the Tree Sovereign's head, as the space of the Heavenly Void cracked open and soul force from beyond began to pour in. Lin Moyu suddenly understood why the Tree Sovereign had hoped he could open all 8 doors, because, under the rules set by the Master of the Heavenly Void Palace, the Tree Sovereign was the gatekeeper. Even after it had achieved the Chaos Realm, it was still trapped here serving as guardian. The tower itself was a shackle. By unlocking the 8 doors, Lin Moyu had set it free. Now it could enter the chaos and obtain freedom. But chaos is hardly a friendly place. While the Tree Sovereign had gained its freedom, it would also face new dangers. Lin Moyu could already sense the presence of chaotic beings from the passage. The Tree Sovereign looked at Lin Moyu. "Thank you for helping break my shackles. I will enter the chaos now, but I will not forget my promise. One day, when you seek me there, I will honor it." As it spoke, a piece of gleaming green heartwood split from the Tree Sovereign and flew into Lin Moyu's hand. This was the Tree Sovereign's heartwood, one of its most crucial possessions, like a dragon's pearl. In giving a piece to Lin Moyu, it was extending a promise. In the future, he would be able to use it to find the Tree Sovereign. Lin Moyu bowed slightly. "Congratulations, Senior, on gaining your freedom. I wish you a safe journey." The Tree Sovereign let out a gentle laugh. All its branches retracted in an instant and then stabbed into the spatial passage. Wails echoed from the tunnel as the Tree Sovereign tore chaotic beings to pieces. The ancient forest shook violently, every ancient tree drilling into the earth at once, the land rupturing around the Tree Sovereign. The Tree Sovereign lifted itself from the earth, its massive tangled roots finally revealed to Lin Moyu. He was deeply shocked. The Tree Sovereign's roots were unimaginably vast by now. The entire forest, it turned out, grew atop those roots. Even the Tree Kings all sprouted from the Tree Sovereign's root system. It could be said that the ancient trees and even the Tree Kings were just branches and offshoots of the Tree Sovereign. They each had their own independent souls and lives, and yet were still subsidiary beings of the Tree Sovereign, a rather unique existence. Lin Moyu gave a wry smile. After fighting the ancient forest for so long, it turned out he'd been battling only the tree sovereign's appendages. What kind of tree was the tree sovereign to have reached this point? As the tree sovereign rose skyward, its form gradually shrank, then floated into the chaos tunnel. Throughout, soul force howled. No one could approach until the sovereign had fully departed and things returned to normal. The ancient ground was left full of holes and scars. Restoring it would take some time. With a thought, Lin Moyu unleashed billions of undead servants and sent them surging at the heavenly void tower. The tower's restriction had now lifted, so anyone could enter. The undead surrounded the first level of the tower inside and out, forming layer after layer of guards. Their task was to encircle the tower and prevent anyone else from entering. This gave Lin Moyu bargaining chips in any negotiation. Of course, the Fairy of Tribulation and the butler could still try to force their way in. But if they did, it would mean open war with Lin Moyu. Given Lin Moyu's temperament, he'd rather fight, even to mutual destruction, than back down. If anyone wanted to profit at his expense, no way. Lin Moyu called out loudly, "Gentlemen, let's have a discussion." The Fairy of Tribulation drifted over, a rough and somewhat hoarse voice echoing out, "I did not expect you to grow so fast." Lin Moyu recognized the voice, replying calmly, "Is that you, Emperor Jin?" After a few seconds' silence, the Pharaoh's voice answered again, "It is." Lin Moyu felt a jolt of apprehension. Clearly, after the Kunlun Emperor had obtained the fairy back then, something else had happened since. Just then, the butler floated over too, his form shifting amid the Tao force. "You could say I'm about half the same as before, but not completely." A cold snort issued from inside the fairy. "Butler, you meddle too much." The butler chuckled, "I am the butler, it's my job to meddle. Am I wrong?" The Fairy of Tribulation gave no response, tacitly accepting the butler's comment. Lin Moyu realized the butler must know what happened, so asked directly, "What exactly happened inside the Fairy of Tribulation?" The butler laughed. "Not much, really. Some lingering wills in the fairy fused with the Kunlun Emperor. But it's still the Kunlun Emperor in control, he's just grown a bit different from how he was at first. Of course, to most people, he's still the Kunlun Emperor." A cold snort echoed from the fairy, "Enough nonsense. Fellow Lin, I want to enter the Heavenly Void Tower. Tell me your terms, I will try to satisfy them." Lin Moyu responded, "Before that, keep your previous promise to me." No matter what change had occurred to the Kunlun Emperor, what mattered to Lin Moyu was the fifth gemstone. The Emperor had once promised that as long as Lin Moyu found the fourth gemstone, he would give him the fifth. The presence in the fairy went silent again, apparently troubled by Lin Moyu's request. Lin Moyu's brow furrowed, he sensed something was off. The butler chuckled, "He does possess the Fairy of Tribulation, but the fairy is special, not everything inside it is up to him." "Enough," the Kunlun Emperor roared, cutting off the butler. The butler kept smiling, not the least bit offended. The Kunlun Emperor finally said, "Fellow Lin, first let me apologize for this. I did obtain the Fairy of Tribulation, but it's a special vessel, my authority isn't absolute within it." At this, Lin Moyu understood. His tone grew cold. "So you can't give me the fifth gemstone after all." As he spoke, Lin Moyu was already preparing to fight, but the Kunlun Emperor hurriedly said, "Not so. I have another way." Lin Moyu said coldly, "Speak." The Kunlun Emperor said, "I can give up the fairy and let you take it for yourself if you wish." Lin Moyu wasn't convinced. "Would you really give it up?" The Kunlun Emperor replied, "I am only a step away from final transcendence. If you allow me into the Heavenly Void Tower, I promise I will leave the fairy for you." Lin Moyu thought for a moment, then said, "Hand over the Fairy of Tribulation now. Let me refine it before I let you into the tower. If you do not agree, I will take what's mine myself." 4234. 4234. Chapter 4234, Not Understanding the Great Tao. Lin Moyu wasn't negotiating, his tone was a final ultimatum. Once, the Fairy of Tribulation had seemed too mysterious and powerful for him to ever face. If a Tao Lord entered the fairy, they would lose their minds and become slaves. Even a great Tao Lord would find it almost impossible to return. This was because the being inside the fairy was half-step chaos. The Kunlun Emperor himself, even an eternal who entered, would be in real trouble. But now, even though Lin Moyu's cultivation was only at the eternal level, his combat power had long since surpassed eternity. He could even briefly unleash the destructive force of Chaos Realm. Now, even if he entered the fairy again, he felt confident he could fight his way out. Both Lin Moyu and the Kunlun Emperor understood this well, which was why the Fairy of Tribulation was being so civil with Lin Moyu here. Otherwise, it would have already tried to force its way through. Beings of this level don't usually speak nicely. Power is always leverage, wherever you are. It's a universal truth. The butler watched as the Fairy of Tribulation fell silent and Lin Moyu presented unwavering pressure, a little surprised. By all rights, the Kunlun Emperor should not be bowing and scraping like this, and the butler began to wonder if Lin Moyu had some hidden advantage, and if perhaps he himself should be a little more polite and make more concessions when it came time for his own negotiation. But the butler didn't know Lin Moyu's strength was not the only reason for his aggressive stance, he also had his own reasons. The last time he had entered the ferry, Lin Moyu had already detected something was different about the Kunlun Emperor's attitude toward him. The Emperor must have found something out, and that was why he behaved differently toward Lin Moyu. This, too, became part of Lin Moyu's bargaining leverage, allowing him to push further within a certain limit. But Lin Moyu didn't push too far. Overall, he stayed within what the other party could accept. As he waited a few seconds without reply, Lin Moyu's aura began to surge, as if he was about to strike. The Kunlun Emperor finally spoke up before Lin Moyu ran out of patience. "Fine, I agree. I hope you can keep your word." Lin Moyu replied calmly, "Don't worry. When I, Lin, say something, I always keep my word." The Kunlun Emperor sighed, "You truly don't go back on your word." Then, a figure slowly materialized atop the Fairy of Tribulation. Lin Moyu immediately recognized him as the Kunlun Emperor, and at that moment the Emperor's voice shifted. "This is my last gamble. If I fail, the worst is utter destruction. The best would be to go quietly back to the spirit domain and fade away." For that fleeting moment, the Kunlun Emperor's true will appeared. Lin Moyu responded, "Look on the bright side. What if you succeed? Besides, your entire great domain was already wrecked by you, anyway." The Kunlun Emperor replied softly, "To gain, you must pay a price. I've done all this, schemed for endless years, countless people have sacrificed for me and that was their fate. A whole great domain, countless worlds, innumerable living beings all summed up by a single word, destiny." Lin Moyu didn't comment on this. To him, the Kunlun Emperor's approach was only natural. But when it comes to karma, who can really see it all? Even half-step chaos, and perhaps even those who reach true chaos realm, can't necessarily escape karma. Unfortunately, as a Void Emperor, the Kunlun Emperor's understanding of the Great Tao was biased. There were many things he did not comprehend. The Kunlun Emperor gave a sharp cry, his aura abruptly changing as he severed his connection with the Fairy of Tribulation. To a vessel spirit, this meant true freedom. But for the Kunlun Emperor, he was still a step away. The Fairy of Tribulation shrank into Lin Moyu's hand, turning into a decorative object less than half a meter long. Lin Moyu infused his soul into the fairy, imprinting it with his spiritual brand. The whole process went exceedingly smoothly, costing him almost no effort. The Kunlun Emperor watched, and his expression clearly changed. He knew very well that refining the fairy should not have been that easy, but Lin Moyu did it effortlessly, which reassured him that his own decision was not a mistake. Lin Moyu put away the Fairy of Tribulation. Even though he was eager to obtain the 5th gemstone, now was not the time. He turned to the butler and asked bluntly, "Senior, what price are you prepared to pay?" The butler chuckled, "This old man has nothing particular of value. There's only one thing I can offer." "Let's hear it." Lin Moyu wanted to know if the butler's offer matched his own expectations. The butler explained, "You should know this is the 5th generation Heavenly Void Palace. Besides this one, there are 4 more. I know their exact locations, and I possess an array that can teleport you directly to the front of any of them. In this domain of the Heavenly Void, there are many dangers. Lin Dao friend, even though you are strong, you don't really need to go looking for trouble and wasting time on these perils." Once the butler left the Heavenly Void, the layout of formations here wouldn't matter anymore, and so this was the only thing he could use as leverage in this deal. Lin Moyu did not immediately answer, but looked to the Kunlun Emperor. "Is what he says true?" The Kunlun Emperor replied quietly, "It's true. There are indeed many weird and dangerous beings around here. You are strong, but don't expect to win every time." The butler added, "In the map I give you, all those dangerous locations are marked, which will save you a lot of trouble." Lin Moyu thought for a while. "All right, it's a deal. But you must give me the item first." "That's natural," replied the butler, instantly condensing a glowing jade tablet that flew into Lin Moyu's hand. Examining it, Lin Moyu saw a map, thoroughly marking every region, all the dangers, and the locations of the other heavenly void palaces. The teleportation array he mentioned was not far away, it could send him directly to any one of the palaces. Lin Moyu said, "Very well, since the deal is struck, let's go in." His undead servants immediately cleared 8 pathways, each one leading straight to a different tower gate. Lin Moyu made a "please" gesture, letting them freely choose whichever entrance they wanted. The Kunlun Emperor quickly chose a door, turned into a beam of light, and shot toward what had previously been the 4th door. The butler selected the position of the 5th door and entered in a swirl of Dao clouds. After they went inside, Lin Moyu recalled his undead servants and murmured to himself, "Actually, it doesn't matter which door you enter, they're all the same. There's really no need to pick." Earlier, when Lin Moyu had been solving the first layer, he realized that these gates were nothing but switches for each floor. The more doors you open, the higher a level of the tower you can access. As for which one you enter, it makes no difference. That's why you can open the first door from anywhere. The master of the Heavenly Void Palace hid a lot of information within the 8 doors. Those who understand, will understand. Lin Moyu approached the Heavenly Void Tower, gazing at the now floated first floor, and chuckled, "What a clever technique, Palace Master. If I hadn't probed further, I'd have been fooled too." 4235. 4235. Chapter 4235, The 9th Floor. When breaking down the 8 great doors, Lin Moyu discovered something special. Each door contained a unique divine rune within. This rune was present, yet did not participate in the transformations of the other runes in the door, it simply existed there. Moreover, when one door was unlocked, this particular rune would vanish with it, it would not flow into the next door. Every door had one such special rune, making 8 in total across the 8 doors. Individually, the 8 runes were meaningless, but combined together they were entirely different. There were dozens of ways to combine the 8 runes, allowing them to form dozens of new runes, and these runes could in turn be combined into numerous arrays. The possible array combinations were nearly endless. However, the master of the Heavenly Void Palace had also provided clues, visible both on the tower itself and on the 8 doors. Lin Moyu approached the Heavenly Void Tower. The first floor had vanished, and the 8 remaining layers were concealed within clouds. He slowly ascended into the mist to study the tower's body. The tower itself bore many designs as well, and the clues were hidden within them. The mist was made of Dao force, and as soon as Lin Moyu entered, the Dao force pressed down on him. He didn't bother figuring out the rules here and simply relied on brute strength to withstand it. The Dao force, like countless giant hands, pressed down with the intent to crush Lin Moyu to a pulp. For a great Dao Lord, being here for 10 breaths would see them smashed to pieces, body and soul alike. Even an eternal would struggle to last long. But Lin Moyu moved through it without any difficulty. All the pressure was divided among his undead servants and the vast world he commanded, so he was unaffected. What he feared least were these sustained, endlessly pressing, but not explosive, attacks. Lin Moyu examined the tower closely and found that the images on its surface corresponded exactly to the images found on the doors. Though the tower's images did not change, they were fixed, and even clearer and richer than the constantly changing images on the doors. Comparing the two, the images produced by the doors were always missing something compared to those on the tower. The clue lay in what was missing. Recalling every image he had previously seen, Lin Moyu scanned his memory and compared them in detail to those on the tower's body, pinpointing every point of absence. He then took the 8 divine runes, combining, overlaying, and rearranging them to fill those gaps in the pattern. Repeating this process again and again, a framework for a formation gradually began to take shape in his mind. As more and more elements came together, Lin Moyu was able to follow the thread to completion and construct the formation in its entirety. After several hundred days, Lin Moyu finally finished outlining the entire array in his mind. The array did not look so complex at first glance, but in reality, it was comprised of 8 fragments, the very runes he'd obtained from each door. Through this process, Lin Moyu had opened a new gateway into the Tao of Divine Runes. The arrangement set by the master of the Heavenly Void Palace was designed to gradually pass on his knowledge of divine runes. In order to break through, a person had to fully grasp all of his rune teachings, only then could they truly solve the puzzle. Lin Moyu slowly ascended, drawing ever closer to the 9th floor of the Heavenly Void Tower. Within the 9th floor, there was a blank space. This was the entrance. Drawing upon all he had sketched in his mind, Lin Moyu recreated the formation perfectly and then gave a gentle forward push. The formation shot into the blank space, forming a new image that blended perfectly with the other images across the tower, harmoniously completing the pattern. Hum, a deep sound rang out, reverberating like a heavy drum upon the soul. Fatty girl let out a little yelp, her plump face contorted with discomfort. As that reverberation boomed, the Tao force surrounding the heavenly void tower transformed into a tornado, rushing toward the tower. The tower's body became a vortex, sucking up every last drop of Tao force until none remained, and in that instant, all pressure vanished. The images spun on the tower's body, weaving like dragons around its surface. Once they were sated with Tao force, before Lin Moyu's eyes, the ninth floor of the heavenly void tower, the ninth door slowly opened. Only now did Fatty girl snap to herself and exclaim in surprise, so the entrance to the ninth floor of the heavenly void tower isn't from inside at all. Lin Moyu chuckled, if you search within and find nothing, sometimes the way forward isn't inside but outside. With that, Lin Moyu stepped through the gate, and the scene before his eyes changed. A starry sky appeared. A flicker of surprise flashed in his gaze. This starry sky seemed familiar to him. He recalled that, at the very start of his cultivation, when he first awakened his skills, the skill demonstration had displayed such a starry sky. During the skill demonstration, he'd seen this kind of starfield. Later, when he entered the greater world, he guessed this starry sky must be somewhere in that world, and he even sought it out deliberately but never found anything similar. After he became the lord of the greater world, with all its secrets at his command, still he never located a starry sky like this one. They might all look similar, but to Lin Moyu, each starfield had its own unique character. Now, what he saw was nearly identical to what had appeared during the skill demonstration. Just then, an artifact appeared from the void behind him. Lin Moyu reached back and caught it. It was the true form of the domain rivers and mountains order. With Fatty girl following Lin Moyu inside, she reverted to her true form and could not manifest visibly. There was no longer any sound from Fatty girl. She seemed to have fallen deeply asleep. Lin Moyu immediately knew it was the space here that was suppressing her. Since she was an artifact forged by the master of the Heavenly Void Palace, it was as easy as breathing for the master to suppress her in this domain. So you have finally arrived. A heavy voice echoed out from the depths of the starry sky, where a bright star path stretched out and ended at Lin Moyu's feet. If he was not mistaken, the voice belonged to the master of the Heavenly Void Palace. The words were, "You have finally arrived." This meant he'd been waiting for Lin Moyu all along. Lin Moyu felt certain that when the master said, "You," he meant him and no one else. The greatest secret of the Heavenly Void Palace was about to be revealed, perhaps one tied to the fate of the entire domain, or even far beyond. There was no use in overthinking. If he wanted answers, he had to step forward. He set foot on the star path, and with each brilliant radiance, the stars receded swiftly while carrying Lin Moyu ever deeper into the starry expanse. The starry sky was vast, countless stars sparkling in every direction, but they were far away and gone in a flash. Even with Lin Moyu's formidable eyesight, he couldn't make out their finer details. At his clearest, all he could see was the glow diffusing from the stars, bringing a touch of light. At last, the star path reached its destination. Lin Moyu no longer knew how far he had traveled. The journey along the star path wasn't conventional flight, but rather warping through the void with a series of teleports. Lin Moyu couldn't even retrace his steps. The catastrophic scepter silently appeared in his hand. This was his greatest trump card, and if any danger arose, he might need it to survive. At the end of the star path, a giant boulder floated 1,000 meters long and wide, nearly square, and 5 or 6 meters thick. Lin Moyu saw that on top of the boulder there was a patch of grass and blooming flowers. In the middle of the grass stood a simple thatched hut. Since he'd come all this way, there was no reason to hesitate now. Lin Moyu stepped onto the boulder, followed a narrow trail through the grass, and arrived before the hut. The door slowly opened, and a gentle breeze wafted out. At that instant, the breeze transformed into sword chi, erupting in the surrounding void. 4236. 4236. Chapter 4236, The Heavenly Void Land and the Heavenly Void Palace. Countless sword lights flashed past Lin Moyu, streaking off into the distance and exploding amid the stars. Each sword light was lethal enough to slay even an Eternal. To those who stood at the very peak of the domain, the ultimate Eternals facing this sword light would be as helpless as children. If that sword light struck him, he too would die, but he could be reborn, so there was no real danger for him. What struck Lin Moyu as truly strange was that, despite their ferocity, the sword lights actively avoided him. What shocked Lin Moyu even more was the source of the sword lights, a lone blade of grass planted before the thatched hut. Earlier, when the door had opened, a faint breeze had blown and stirred that blade of grass, igniting this frenzy of sword light. This blade of grass was a wondrous treasure, of a truly unfathomable grade. Footsteps sounded, and a figure stepped out from behind the door. His whole form was ethereal and indistinct. Lin Moyu could not make out his features. He came to the door, reached out, and pulled up the little blade of grass by the roots. The grass erupted with another burst of sword light, which the man easily snuffed out with a pinch of his fingers. Watching this, Lin Moyu realized the stranger's power had reached an unimaginable level. In his memory, perhaps only the two robed elders' green robe and white robe could compare to this strength. After uprooting the blade of grass, the figure tossed it aside casually. A stray weed growing by the door. You weren't frightened, were you, fellow Taoist? Lin Moyu gave a respectful bow. Lin Moyu gives greetings, senior. This man was simply far too powerful. Lin Moyu knew that, should he ever cross swords with him, he would have no hope of victory. The sense of helplessness here was even greater than when he had faced the tree sovereign. So he was honest and extremely polite. The figure let out a soft laugh. No need to be so formal, Taoist. I am but a sliver of a lingering soul, subsisting here for countless years, hardly worthy of being called a senior. At these words, Lin Moyu felt thunderstruck in his heart, barely able to steady his Tao mind. Such overwhelming power, yet only a mere remnant soul. Just this fragment alone could annihilate eternals and suppress even those of Chaos Realm. How powerful must the true body have been? Lin Moyu could not imagine. The figure moved to the front of the hut and, with a wave of his hand, made two meditation mats appear on the grass. He gestured for Lin Moyu to sit. I have no real belongings to offer, please forgive the meagerness and make do for now. Lin Moyu had nothing to object to and settled himself on the mat, very much, knowing his place. The figure sat as well, saying calmly, when I set things up long ago, I required strength, wisdom, and talent, all were essential. Since you have made it here, you have already proven your ability, fellow Taoist. Lin Moyu asked quietly, Senior, are you the master of the Heavenly Void Palace? From the misty figure came a soft chuckle. Perhaps I once was. After all, my name is Wushi, 5th generation. His words left Lin Moyu a bit puzzled. What did he mean by, perhaps I once was? The ambiguity in this statement held too many implications, and was far from certain. If you analyzed it deeply, it almost seemed as if even he couldn't be sure he had ever truly been the Heavenly Void Palace master. To wield this kind of strength yet still lack certainty, what exactly was the Heavenly Void Palace? With a chuckle, 5th generation asked, Taoist, how do you see this Heavenly Void Land and the Heavenly Void Palace? Lin Moyu shook his head. This junior's knowledge is lacking, I have no real opinion. 5th said, sometimes, abstaining from wild speculation is actually a wise course. You are clever undoubtedly, you must have pondered many possibilities, but in the end, guesses are just guesses, not facts. Some matters can be questioned in the heart, but must never be spoken aloud. A single slip of the tongue can bring great misfortune. Since ancient times, there have been countless mighty ones who understood the heavens, the earth, and even gained insight into chaos itself. Yet compared to the chaos and the universe, the hardest thing of all to fathom is the human heart. Keep everything in your heart, and you'll bring no trouble. Voice it, and even if no one else hears, heaven and earth will know. His words made Lin Moyu wary. He immediately recognized the key point and replied, Thank you for the lesson, senior. I understand now. 5th generation was telling him, there are many things that, if kept unspoken, no matter how much you stir inside, only you know. Once released from the lips, even if no one else hears, some being, or even the universe itself, might sense it, possibly drawing disaster. In the domain, this might not happen, but in the chaos beyond, who could say? From his words, Lin Moyu guessed that perhaps in chaos, there really were entities who knew all, like the discerning beast in the domain. Such entities might not be able to read the thoughts of living beings, Buddha. 5th said, since you aren't hazarding any guesses as to what the heavenly void is, let me tell you. Listen well. Please, senior. Lin Moyu sat up straight, feeling he was about to learn a world-shaking secret. 5th generation said, a domain world must eventually return to the void. Long ago, when the primordial domain world returned to nothingness, it became the heavenly void. From that, the 1st generation heavenly void palace appeared, its master presiding, gathering primal chaos energy and from that forging sky and earth, creating new domain worlds. He continued step by step, explaining the origin of the Heavenly Void Land and the Heavenly Void Palace, allowing Lin Moyu to gradually understand everything's source. The domain world in which he found himself was known as the 5th generation domain. Long ago, it had a single origin. That origin was known as the primordial domain world. Due to certain reasons, it was destroyed. This destruction was called returning to the void. After the world returned to the void, a region formed that was the Heavenly Void Land. When the Heavenly Void Land first formed, chaos energies gathered there and from them a palace was formed, the 1st generation Heavenly Void Palace. At that time, it gained a palace master of immense power, who sat in the 1st Heavenly Void Palace, fused its might with chaos, and used that to forge a new world. The world he forged was called the 1st generation domain. When the 1st generation domain finally also returned to the void, a 2nd Heavenly Void Palace appeared, the 2nd generation Heavenly Void Palace. A new palace master rose and, like before, gathered chaos anew and forged another domain. Each time, as each domain completed its cycle and returned to the void, a new palace arose and a new palace master shouldered the task. This happened 5 times, so the present age is called the 5th generation domain. The name of the domain had been determined from the very beginning, which is why the Torch Dragon had said what he did. Every domain was forged by the contemporary palace master. It was their mission, their destiny. In creating the domain, each master spent all their power, even their life. When the new domain was complete, the palace master perished. There were no exceptions in any generation. The figure before him was the 5th generation Heavenly Void Palace Master, born with the mission of forging the 5th domain. Once he completed that mission, he died. But in the process of forging the domain, he developed many doubts. Why did he have to create 5 domains and give his life for that purpose? Why was he chosen to be the 5th generation Heavenly Void Palace Master? Where did he come from in the first place? He could not resist his destiny, but though he doubted, he still followed it. Still, those doubts prompted him to take precautions. He didn't use all his power in forging the 5th generation domain but arranged a plan within the Heavenly Void Palace, planted a fruit with the power of the Tao, and waited for someone to come and unravel his challenge. Because of this, the 5th generation domain was not perfect and had many flaws. That's why there arose things like chaos-born ferocious beasts, which bogged down cultivators, and the imperfection of the domain made it harder for cultivators inside to transcend. But to 5th generation, he did not actually care what happened to the domain. What mattered was whether the puzzle could be solved. And Lin Moyu was the one he was waiting for. 4237, 4237. Chapter 4237, The Transaction. After listening to 5th generation's explanation, Lin Moyu finally understood why he said, "Perhaps I was once the Heavenly Void Palace Master." There was a deep meaning behind those words. At the time, he indeed was the master, able to control everything about the Heavenly Void Palace. But the Heavenly Void Palace was not his creation, and he didn't even know his own origin. How could such a palace master truly count as a real master? He thought of himself as just a tool, a device for evolving the domain. He even felt that the previous domains and their so-called powerful palace masters were also just tools. He was unwilling to fade away like that, so he wanted to break free from fate. This former 5th generation Heavenly Void Palace Master, with only clues and feelings to go on, had considered many things and tried to change his outcome. Unable to resist his mission, he could only find alternate methods. He must have tried a number of things, though he did not explain the details. Leaving behind a remnant soul here was one of these attempts. Doubtless, he had left other backdoors as well. As Lin Moyu listened, he began to contemplate more deeply, combining this with all that he'd previously learned. He arrived at a deeper realization. The breakthrough point lay with the Spirit Demon clan. The reason the Spirit Demons came to the 5th generation domain was due to commands from the Heavenly Supreme. And as for why the Supreme would send the Spirit Demons, part of the reason was to help the cultivators of the 5th domain, otherwise it might have been destroyed by the beasts or gone in a very bad direction. This means the 5th domain had always been under the Supreme's watchful gaze. Pushing the logic further, the earlier domains, most likely, were also watched, and perhaps all the domains in all generations were the same, all ultimately directed by the Supreme. If so, anything the 5th generation Palace Master did was likely known and permitted by the Supreme. A single thought from the Supreme could determine his entire plan's success or failure. Generation after generation of domains. Lin Moyu sensed it was like the endless cycle of reincarnation for living beings. If an ultimate manipulator like the Supreme is behind it all, then he must have his own grand plan. If Lin Moyu rashly got involved, it might not be wise. Suddenly, he was startled by a new possibility. In the Supreme's eyes, domains are nothing. An entire domain could be erased with a wave of his hand. If everything was orchestrated by the Supreme, then an imperfect fifth domain could be destroyed and simply replaced with a sixth, or even a seventh, without hassle. So, why go to such trouble to send spirit demons and maintain a balance? There had to be something unique about the fifth domain, some reason why it could not be immediately destroyed. And what was that special factora? Lin Moyu thought about himself and realized it could only be him. The green-robed and white-robed elders were likely the heavenly supremes, and both treated him differently, even with a touch of friendliness, showing none of the detachment or disdain one would expect from a transcendent being. Green Robe even imprisoned Ghost Husband, whose avatar was hidden at the core of the domain clearly. Ghost Husband was scheming against the domain and so was imprisoned. The basic reason for this, ultimately, was to prevent the domain's collapse. On top of that, the Unaging Immortality Great Tao was uniquely special. It had come from outside the domain and forcibly entered the origin land. And the only person carrying this immortality Tao was Lin Moyu himself. Piecing everything together, Lin Moyu arrived at a conclusion that shocked him. The only reason the fifth generation domain still existed was because of him. It was a shocking answer, but seemed completely logical. He couldn't find any other explanation. What is so special about me, Lin Moyu wondered, that I'm being given such extraordinary consideration? However, having thought this far, he made up his mind. He would participate in the Fifth Palace Master's rebellion. He would use the Palace Master's arrangement to try and figure out what the Supremes truly wanted. After all, maybe his very appearance here, encountering the fifth generation Palace Master, was already within the Heavenly Supreme's oversight. If there was anything inappropriate, they would have warned him by now. Since they didn't react, maybe it meant they tacitly approved his choice. A game within a game, and Lin Moyu had gradually transformed from a pawn into a player. Now, he was about to step onto the grandest chessboard of all, about to see who held the ultimate pieces. How could he possibly turn back now? Lin Moyu said quietly, "So, what do you want me to do? And what can you offer me in return?" Fifth generation replied, "I have always suspected that the other heavenly void palaces hide secrets about our origins, but I cannot enter the other palaces. I hope you can go there and uncover their mysteries. I once had the strange feeling that I might be somehow connected to the first generation Palace Master. This must also be verified. As for what I can offer you, he gestured, and 10 blades of grass flew over from afar, each identical to the one before the door that had unleashed sword light. Fifth said, "These are chaos swordgrass. Each one can unleash a sword cut, with destructive power comparable to a full-strength blow from a minor accomplishment Chaos Realm cultivator." Minor accomplishment Chaos Realm? Lin Moyu asked. He'd never heard this term before. Fifth generation explained, "The Chaos Realm is a universal stage. I know that some domains use other terms. Once you enter chaos and your body and soul are fully chaotified, you're called a Chaos Realm cultivator. Right after you transcend but before full chaotification, that's called initial entry Chaos Realm. Once you fully chaotify, it's minor accomplishment, and with experience and understanding, you move from minor accomplishment to major accomplishment." Lin Moyu asked, "After achieving major accomplishment, do you become a heavenly supreme?" Fifth generation replied, "After major accomplishment there is one more level, called perfection or domain lord. This is the foundation for becoming a heavenly supreme. If you want to be a supreme, you must wield a domain. If you lack domain power, you can't become a supreme." Lin Moyu realized that the road he'd chosen before had been correct. Without becoming a domain lord, you could never become a supreme. Someone like the Torch Dragon, for example, had chosen the wrong path and limited his future. But something about fifth generation's words struck Lin Moyu as odd. How could he know this in such detail? If he was just a tool, a being raised to evolve the domain for the Supreme's use, he shouldn't know all of this. A tool should understand the processes but not the reasons behind them. Lin Moyu then asked, "Was the Tree Sovereign also one of your arrangements?" Fifth generation replied, "When I was evolving the fifth generation domain, I discovered an ancient yet vibrant seed, so I planted it outside the void. I never expected it would grow so strong, even reaching the Chaos Realm. I drew in chaos energy to help it achieve chaotification, reaching minor accomplishment, and had it guard the heavenly void palace until someone could open the 8 doors. So that's the answer. The tree sovereign was minor accomplishment chaos realm, while at Lin Moyu's best he could only reach initial entry chaos realm. The gap between them was enormous. The higher the realm, the more every difference was infinitely magnified. Those words were indeed true. At this point, 5th generation added, if you can fulfill my request, I can help you achieve initial chaotification. Initial chaotification, that is, the same state as the Tree Kings. Your flesh and soul would be chaotified in surface only, not yet fully completed, but still a huge leap in power. Lin Moyu had already decided to help him, so with this extra benefit he promptly answered, deal. 4238. 4238. Chapter 4238, All Our Schemes. Seeing that Lin Moyu accepted, 5th generation clearly seemed happy, even a bit excited. His phantom image wavered several times. After countless years of waiting, the person he had hoped for had finally arrived. 5th smiled softly, fellow Taoist, you know, I am truly pleased right now. Lin Moyu could feel his emotions, even though he was just a wisp of remnant soul, he was no different from a real living being. 5th said, now that you have agreed, let me tell you some things about the various heavenly void palaces and the heavenly void domain itself. You've already obtained the heavenly void map from the butler, so I won't repeat those details. His array is very effective and allows access to the main gate of each heavenly void palace in every era. But as for the interior of those palaces, he actually knows very little. Over countless years, I have made some attempts to explore them and have achieved a few results. 5th generation, having once been the palace master of the 5th heavenly void palace, understood everything that had taken place in this palace better than anyone. That included how the Kunlun Emperor obtained the Fairy of Tribulation, and how the butler made repeated visits. Everything happened under 5th's eye. Even the butler's entry was tacitly permitted by him, otherwise, the butler could never have come in, nor could the Kunlun Emperor have obtained the Fairy of Tribulation. The more Lin Moyu listened, the more shocked he became. 5th not only monitored every move Kunlun Emperor and the butler made, but even left marks on them. Kunlun Emperor's acquisition of the Fairy of Tribulation was no accident, it was fate. At the time, the Kunlun Emperor was lost in the palace and happened to stumble across a side door guarded by a puppet. Normally, if he'd simply backed off, the puppet wouldn't have pursued him. But that time, the puppet did not stop because 5th was manipulating events behind the scenes. With 5th's unseen guidance, the Kunlun Emperor obtained the Fairy of Tribulation and then used it to break through the palace wall and escape. On the surface, it seemed the Kunlun Emperor became the owner of the Fairy of Tribulation, but in truth, he only held partial control. The fairy could travel between reality and the void, wandering everywhere. Thanks to the fairy, 5th could observe a portion of the domain he had created, and learn about many things inside the domain. Still, even 5th was not the true master of the Fairy of Tribulation. According to him, the fairy always existed within the heavenly void palace. He tried to refine it but had never been successful, so he was merely one among the fairy's users, just with permissions higher than Kunlun Emperor's. The Fairy of Tribulation is critical. If Lin Moyu wanted to enter any other heavenly void palace, the fairy would be the key. Fortunately, the fairy is now in Lin Moyu's possession, otherwise, 5th would have made sure it got to Lin Moyu anyway. The timing of Kunlun Emperor's return, what appeared pure coincidence, was, in truth, orchestrated by 5th. His manipulation was so subtle even Kunlun Emperor never knew. After hearing everything about the Kunlun Emperor, Lin Moyu couldn't help but suspect that the causal ring played a role as well. The fruit he'd planted ensured every choice he made was correct. Unknowingly, that karmic fruit was pushing the development of events. 5th then spoke about the butler, who was a being birthed by the heavenly void land itself, a special entity with extremely high affinity with the great Tao, able to hide in the Tao, manipulate all sorts of Tao, and transform endlessly through the Tao. The butler had existed for an even longer era than the 5th heavenly void palace itself, but his power was limited by the laws of the heavenly void land, and so he was forever stuck at half-step chaos realm. Leaning on this domain's Tao, the butler could demonstrate power greater than half-step chaos, but was still not quite on the level of true chaos. To break free, the butler plotted for many years. When the Kunlun Emperor first arrived, he wounded Little Python, then forced his way in. The butler followed Kunlun Emperor, struck the final blow to Little Python, and directly sent Little Python into Beast Abyss, beginning a cycle of reincarnation. The butler thought that without the palace guardian beast, he'd have unrestricted access. Fifth witnessed all this and, adjusting his own plans, let things flow that way. The butler entered the fifth heavenly void palace again and again, relying on the Tao to come and go, and set up formations inside. He imagined his actions went unnoticed, but through the butler's own formations, Fifth was able to slip out of the fifth palace and observe the others. That's why Fifth enabled some of the butler's actions. The butler was his tool. Everyone has their own desires, their own pursuits. In the end, it's all for self-interest, each using the other, and in the end only one can come out on top. Last, Fifth talked about the other heavenly void palaces. He couldn't get in. The 4 other palaces were all tightly shut, and his special place as 5th General Palace Master meant that, unless he forced his way in, he had no access. Lin Moyu, on the other hand, could enter. There are several ways in. One is through the main door, but that requires cracking the main gate's formation, which is different for each palace. The other is to use the Ferry of Tribulation to fly directly inside. The risk in that is whatever the palace masters may have left behind, no one knows what lies within, so a direct entry would be dangerous. How Lin Moyu chooses is up to him. Fifth gave no advice and left the decision entirely to Lin Moyu. Lin Moyu asked, "Are you certain all the other palace masters have perished?" Fifth replied quietly, "Absolutely certain. See, I am only a remnant soul now. If one day the 5th domain returns to the void, a 6th generation heavenly void palace will appear, and I will vanish completely." Lin Moyu understood. With every generation, each succeeding the last, the arrival of a new era always meant the passing of the old. The only traces remaining from previous generations are the heavenly void palaces, nothing else. No one knows when the 5th domain will return to void. Fifth can only wait and hope that a solution is found before that moment comes. Lin Moyu said, "All right, I'll try soon. I hope I can uncover the truth here and learn why all this came to be." Fifth's voice was heavy. "I leave it in your hands." Lin Moyu smiled and replied, "I'll do my best. One more question. What about the Kunlun Emperor and the butler? Can either of them achieve transcendence?" Fifth shook his head. "No chance." As he spoke, he raised a finger, and 2 scenes appeared in the starry sky, one with the Kunlun Emperor, one with the butler. Though both had entered the first floor, they were each in entirely separate spaces, never meeting. Who knows what the 2 were experiencing? Both looked troubled, and Lin Moyu could sense a certain instability in their auras, as if both had been wounded. Fifth explained, "I had selfish motives while evolving the 5th domain, especially the Void Realm. The domain emperors inside all had innate flaws. Their limit is half-step chaos, and they can never go further. If they really did move ahead, it would become their downfall. The Soul Devourer Emperor test would destroy them. There are some things worth striving for, but others you can't force. If you insist on going beyond your destiny, you'll only experience disaster." His words sounded reasonable, but Lin Moyu was unconvinced. "I'd rather believe in self-determination than fate." Fifth said, "Heaven never blocks every path. For all things and methods, there is always a sliver of hope, but you need vast luck to find that chance, and that luck is not easily obtained. For the Kunlun Emperor, it's impossible. He is weighed down by too much karma. Even heaven no longer acknowledges him. His one strand of hope is already cut off." 4239, 4239. Chapter 4239, Using Each Other. Lin Moyu could naturally understand what 5th generation implied. He had previously noticed that the Kunlun Emperor carried far too much karmic baggage, and that the world's fortune could never truly accept him. That single slender thread of hope that belonged to him had long since been severed. No matter how brilliant he was, there was simply no way for him to go any further. The Heavenly Void Tower would be his final stop. If he knew when to retreat, he could still go back and be an emperor, ruling as leader of the Eternals at the half-step Chaos Realm. Within the domain, he would still be at the top, and even in the Void Realm, he'd be unmatched. But if he insisted on pushing ahead, the Heavenly Void Palace would become his grave. If he died here without someone to send him into the Beast Abyss, he wouldn't even get a chance at reincarnation. Back then, at least, the butler had given Little Python the finishing blow, and sent it to the Beast Abyss, otherwise, Little Python would have perished completely. 5th generation finished describing what he knew about each Heavenly Void Palace, then said in a low voice, "Now I'll draw in chaos power to help you enter initial chaotification. In this way, your strength will soar, and your safety will also be better secured." Lin Moyu nodded. "Then I'll trouble you, senior." His tone was sincere, with a touch of gratitude, as if he truly trusted this 5th generation palace master. But Lin Moyu's mind was like a clear mirror. He knew 5th generation only spoke so nicely because it benefited himself. Sending him to the other heavenly void palaces surely meant there was some plot behind it. He schemed against the Kunlun Emperor and the butler, making plans within plans, each step thought out 3 moves ahead. It was never so simple. And the wisp before Lin Moyu was only a remnant soul. But was it really just a remnant? In any case, there was no harm in accepting the benefit first. With a light tap of his finger, 5th generation made the mass of chaos swordgrass on the lawn sway, their power gathering into a single sword that slashed open the starry sky. The sky split open with a great crack, and beyond was a thick mass of chaos chi. This isn't chaos. Lin Moyu instantly recognized it. Beyond that crack was not the chaos world. He had peered through a rift in the Deadlands and felt true chaos before. The difference was obvious. 5th generation said, when I was evolving the domain, I drew in a vast amount of chaos energy, but, for selfish reasons, kept some aside. Now, I can use it to help you achieve an initial chaotification. He sounded completely honest, but Lin Moyu was alert. He didn't trust, so he naturally did not believe every word 5th generation said. In Lin Moyu's eyes, 9.5 out of 10 things 5th generation said were true, but the half-lie was always at the critical core. Yet in the current situation, he couldn't refuse. And since his soul gave no warning, it seemed there was no immediate danger. 5th generation guided the chaos energy down like sweet rain upon Lin Moyu. Refine it, if you please. Lin Moyu nodded and began. Immediately, he sensed something was off. Within the chaos energy there lurked a trace of impurity. It seemed insignificant but was stubbornly difficult to remove. At the heart of that impurity, there seemed to be a sliver of consciousness. Lin Moyu instantly realized this was the back door 5th generation had left, just as he did when watching the Kunlun Emperor and the butler. If Lin Moyu refined this chaos energy, 5th generation would be able to observe or even influence him. Fortunately, Lin Moyu's soul was sharp enough to detect this. 5th generation not only wanted him to do things, but also planned to use him as a tool. Since that was the case, Lin Moyu would make sure he gained the benefit without being used. Chaos chi from the vast world surged up in silence and clashed with the chaos energy drawn forth by 5th generation. In this process, Lin Moyu did not undergo any chaotification at all. But outwardly, it looked like he was earnestly refining and absorbing it at high speed, using up a great amount of chaos energy, while his body underwent no change. 5th generation was surprised. Taoist, why is this happening? Lin Moyu shook his head. I'm not sure. No matter what I try, it doesn't work. How strange, 5th murmured. He too couldn't quite figure out what was happening. Lin Moyu mused, could it be because I'm still merely at the eternal level? 5th considered, perhaps that's all there is to it. Not being able to find any other reason, they accepted that explanation. Lin Moyu said, then don't waste any more chaos chi, senior. Even though I may not achieve chaotification, with my abilities, I should still be some help to you. At this point, it has to be that way. Just be careful, that's all. 5th withdrew the chaos energy, seeming to offer a kind reminder. But Lin Moyu heard a note of disappointment. Perhaps 5th was frustrated at being unable to observe him. But then again, 5th still had other ways, such as the Ferry of Tribulation. He had previously claimed that once the ferry went into other heavenly void palaces, he would lose his connection to it. Lin Moyu wasn't sure he fully believed this. Even the chaos swordgrass he had received was suspect using it. Could there be danger? If he ever became 5th's enemy or was no longer useful, would the swordgrass turn on him immediately? After reclaiming the chaos chi, 5th generation opened a passageway with a wave. Go on. Whether you succeed or not, I'll remember what you've done. If anything comes up, return and we'll talk more. Lin Moyu rose, bowed slightly, and stepped into the passage to leave. Once he left, a long sigh echoed out in the starry sky, a sigh that would not fade even after millions of years, filling the entire starfield with a sense of regret. The scene shifted, and Lin Moyu found himself standing before the 5th generation heavenly void palace. Little Python, the guardian beast, had its eyes wide open, watching him. Master, you're finally back. I was so worried, Little Python called out loudly. Although titled the guardian beast, in truth it was not allowed inside the heavenly void palace, it was only a figurehead. Lin Moyu nodded and, with a turn of his hand, stored away the chaos swordgrass. For now, it naturally had its uses, So long as he was not Fifth's enemy, it was a trump card, but if he ever did turn against Fifth, the swordgrass could become a fatal threat. Little Python, do you still want to stick around as the guardian beast? Little Python shook its big head energetically. I want to stay with you, Master. All right, go inside and stay put for now. Once we return, I'll let you out again. With a wave, Lin Moyu stowed Little Python away too. Truthfully, after so many cycles of reincarnation, Little Python no longer had much to do with the founding Heavenly Void Palace. Besides, anyone could become the guardian beast or no one, it didn't matter. Fifth wouldn't object to him taking Little Python along. Lin Moyu knew perfectly well, he still had used to Fifth, so there'd be no falling out. But he also had to be ready in case one day there was a clash, he'd need a plan. Following the map the butler had given, Lin Moyu set out across the heavenly void land, taking in the sense of deep antiquity everywhere. Soon he arrived at the formation the butler had set up. Following the instructions, he activated it. He did not go in at once, but took time to closely observe the formation. The butler wasn't entirely trustworthy, and Fifth had likely tinkered with this array, so who knew what lay inside. After a moment, Lin Moyu smiled faintly. Sure enough, there's something wrong here. 4240, 4240. Chapter 4240, Refining the Fairy of Tribulation. The fifth-generation Heavenly Void Palace Master had once tampered with the butler's formation, adding his own tricks completely unbeknownst to the butler. The fifth's mastery of divine runes was far beyond the butler's, the two were not on the same level at all. But trying to hide such schemes from Lin Moyu was not so easy. Despite fifth generation's caution, Lin Moyu still managed to spot clues. In one rather inconspicuous spot on the teleportation array, a few broken divine runes could be found. These runes blended in perfectly with the formation, most of the time they seemed like mere scraps, discovered only when the array was actually activated. So Lin Moyu first activated the array before searching for them. His analysis indicated that this particular rune's function was to mark the user of the teleport array a nearly invisible trace, but enough to allow fifth generation to observe anyone using it. For years, almost everything the butler did had been under fifth generation's eyes. And there had to be deeper intentions behind it all. Lin Moyu did not remove the runes left by fifth generation. As soon as he did, fifth would notice. Instead, Lin Moyu took out a blank jade slip, an empty, unmarked piece. With a touch of soul fire, he quickly refined it, turning it into a solid little array plate. He then casually drew a simple formation on the plate, and, holding the jade in hand, entered the teleportation array, headed for the fourth generation Heavenly Void Palace. The array rumbled to life, opening a spatial channel between the Tao, and Lin Moyu saw the world blur into rivers of light as he was transmitted. The fifth's hidden runes activated too, slipping into the flow of light and stealthily heading toward Lin Moyu. But Lin Moyu activated his own array plate, setting his formation into motion. It drew the fifth's mark into itself. Fifth generation would believe his rune had activated and attached to someone, and with no one else in the teleportation formation except Lin Moyu, he'd never suspect otherwise. When the transmission ended, Lin Moyu was standing before the grand gate of the fourth generation Heavenly Void Palace. He kept the array plate attached to his waist, feigning total ignorance. Looking around, Lin Moyu examined the palace. The patterns on the gate were quite different from those in the fifth generation domain. Almost all the lifeforms depicted were unfamiliar to him. These were all beings from the fourth generation domain. Each generation's world contained utterly distinct creatures. Not recognizing them was only natural. From the characteristics, however, Lin Moyu could glean some information. The fifth generation domain was marked by a complete set of great Tao, giving rise to all sorts of life. The diversity was such that no type was considered absolutely superior. But the fourth generation's palace doors and walls mostly depicted fish-like creatures, and Lin Moyu felt powerful traces of water Tao and cause and effect Tao from them. So, the fourth generation domain was a world evolved primarily from the great Tao of water. No, a single great Tao of water wouldn't be enough to make an entire domain. At best, it played an outsized role. Since the fifth succeeded the fourth and the fourth generation palace went silent at the moment the fifth palace appeared, there probably shouldn't be any life left inside. Lin Moyu walked up and tried to push open the grand gates. But they were tightly sealed, not budging no matter how much strength he used. To enter, he had to solve the riddle of the door. But where was the riddle? And how was it to be unraveled? There was no visible divine rune, no clear formation. Lin Moyu could not immediately see any solution. The fourth generation domain had its own rules, born from the former master's intent, a wholly different system from the fifth. If he searched slowly enough he would surely find the answer, but that would mean wasting considerable time. He didn't want to waste so much effort. The fourth generation was already gone. Outside of its historical and Tao value, it had little to offer the present or future. Being straightforward, Lin Moyu simply produced the Ferry of Tribulation. He'd use it to crash inside. The ferry was already partially refined, so with a thought, Lin Moyu entered its space. Upon the deck, many Tao Lord level beings, some real, some illusory, were hard at work, hailing from diverse realms. They'd already lost all sense of self, functioning only on the Ferry's orders. Without consciousness, such beings were nothing but walking corpses in Lin Moyu's eyes, worse than dead. He realized now he could command these soul slaves, order them to do anything, even charge out in battle for him if needed. But that was pointless. They were only Tao Lords, their power negligible in his eyes. Partial refinement of the ferry allowed him to move freely about its deck. To go deeper, into the ship's interior, required further refining, and at present, he could not yet command its core. His soul force surged through the Ferry of Tribulation, probing for deeper control. As his soul delved, Lin Moyu mapped out the internal structure and understood the purpose of each region. The ferry was split into outer, inner, and central regions. The outer region was the deck, where the ferry could control or erase the souls of those aboard, making them slaves. Whether it could erase or enslave a target depended on the controller's own strength. When the Kunlun Emperor controlled the ferry, he'd only been a weak half-step chaos barely above eternal level, so the ferry could overpower Tao Lords and lesser beings, but struggled against great Tao Lords. You can only suppress enemies one major realm below you. Honestly, that's not so useful. If you're already that much stronger, you could crush opponents yourself. Why bother with the ferry? So the true ability was not combat but rather in erasing souls to create ferry slaves, though even this was less useful than his own army of undead servants. The ferry, after all, was not a weapon of mass destruction, its strength lay elsewhere. The inner region was the administrator's zone, the part Lin Moyu had reached before, including the statue. With this refined, he'd be able to fully command the ferry. The center was reserved for the ferry's true master. Its function was still unclear, as he hadn't refined it yet. Lin Moyu had mastered the outer region and was refining the inner, but it was getting slower and more difficult. He soon understood. The Kunlun Emperor had only ever refined the inner region, as had fifth generation neither had truly become the ferry's owner, just its managers and controllers. The ferry had existed long before the fifth generation palace, indicating its creator was far more mysterious. Dozens of days later, Lin Moyu finally finished refining the inner region. He became the new manager and controller. When he attempted to refine the central region, though, his soul force was blocked. He stopped right away. The core felt dangerous, and he sensed that a forced refinement would end very badly. That's enough for now. I'll just use it as it is. With a single thought, the Ferry of Tribulation flared with dazzling light, illuminating the main gate of the fourth generation Heavenly Void Palace.